is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
It is Thursday, the 29th of August, 2024. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. This is News to 6 a.m. on News Power Digital. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says he's fed up with being blamed for TNT's spiraling crime rate, adding he's also tired of people seeking leniency for some criminals. Speaking at a post-cabinet news briefing yesterday at Whitehall, Dr. Rowley said those contributing to high crime should not be given a pass, especially those who harm children. He also suggested that attributing high crime to office holders is baseless, while he condemned the real monsters responsible for the bloodshed against law-abiding citizens. Dr. Rowley says he has no empathy for these criminals, quote, for a fellow citizen to have seen a child in someone's hand or in someone's presence and deliberately discharge a firearm knowing that you're going to kill that child. You're a different kind of devil. Unfortunately, we have those in this country. You will watch a 5-year-old child and discharge a firearm into that child's body. I am a grandfather of 4 children, and that one made me feel very sad for the people who have ended up producing this as part of their family, end quote. The Prime Minister added, don't give them any pass by trying to blame me, because I have the responsibility to ensure that those whose job it is to identify and chase down and bring them to justice, that they are on the job, end quote. Campaign finance reform reviews and recommendations from the Elections and Boundaries Commission and Self-Governance for Tobago are some of the matters on the government's agenda which will be brought to the Parliament during the new term. This disclosed by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. The Parliament will meet on Monday, September 9th, which will be the last day of the 4th session. Dr. Rowley, however, explained the new parliamentary session will start on September 13th, and these matters will be addressed in the new session. There was drama at the first public consultation on the placement of the statues, monuments, and other historical signage yesterday, after one member of the audience used a phrase deemed to be offensive by some members of the audience. Not even half an hour had passed during the consultation at government campus in Port-of-Spain before disruption occurred. The incident played out in the view of Zakia Uzuma-Wadada of the Emancipation Support Committee, which was shut down by another member of the audience, Frank Ferrier. Uzuma-Wadada was called for a change of statues, monuments, and other historical signage to people of importance to Trinbagonians, she added. Who are important to us? Whom do we see in our spaces? Whom do we want our children to feel proud about? And it cannot be Picton. It cannot be Christopher Columbus. During a contribution, Ferrer interrupted, I disagree with you. You are rambling. He was told to wait his turn to contribute by moderator D.K. Roston. He did not, however. Uzuma-Wadada called for the renaming of Oxford Street to Kwame Ture Street. Ferrer exclaimed, well, go back to Africa then. The comment did not sit well with other groups in the audience who called for him to be put out of the session. Former United National Congress local government councillor Jason Ali, who has defected to the People's National Movement, was yesterday physically moved to the PNM side. When the council of the Sipari Borough Corporation sat, this followed screening of the constituency of Faizabad for the PNM for the 2025 election on Friday. 2 Thursdays ago, Ali, a councillor for Sipari West Faizabad, resigned from the UNC, claiming he was being victimized since his decision to contest a national executive NASDAQ post for the team led by Maro MP Rushton Parry at the party's internal polls on June 15th. Sipari Mayor Dundas Mairu yesterday announced the UNC had selected Alderman Victor Roberts to shadow as councillor for Ali's electoral district. He said this was necessary to represent the interests of the UNC supporters who elected Ali as councillor. With Ali's move to the PNM, the corporation now stands at 5-4 split in favor of the UNC. Prior to the start of yesterday's statutory meeting of the Sipari Corporation, Ali was already seated on the PNM side. He was accused of being a traitor by those who elected him, but responded by saying it would be left to voters to decide if he was a traitor, but believe he had enough momentum to carry him into contesting the 2025 election if he's chosen. In news of the region, Grenada has not received any money from the international community to assist with hurricane relief from the passage of Hurricane Beryl. Before reading out a long list of donations from individual countries and persons during Wednesday's parliamentary sitting, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell said Grenada experienced an example of what he described as climate injustice. it was revealed Hurricane Beryl caused $600 million in damage on the island. And the Supreme Court has kept a block on President Joe Biden's student loan relief program that would extend the payment periods and effectively forgive outstanding debts of $12,000 or less. It was another blow to Mr. Biden's goal of providing sweeping relief to millions of Americans after the Supreme Court struck down his attempt to cancel as much as $400 billion in student loans just last year. And that is news to 6 a.m. right here on News Power Digital. We'll have major news coming your way at 7 a.m. Good morning.
Up to date and credible. Power 102 Digital.
Good morning, neighbors, on this, the 29th day of August. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, on the show this morning, we just heard from Dr. Paul Richards. We'll hear from Richard Ragoobarsingh. We got Shane and Ruben in the mix. Of course, my name is Steve Khan. 25 degrees at Piarco International Airport. Same in our beautiful sister isle of Tobago. Adverse weather alert, yellow, is in effect till 11 o'clock this morning. All right. And traffic-wise, a bit busy this morning, actually, driving into Port of Spain. And, of course, they did do some work, Paul. Let me say good morning to you first. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, they did do some work on that flyover heading into Port of Spain by NP Ragoobarsingh. I tell you, we just can't do anything properly. It's just a bunch of humps now. It's humps. It's like a Wednesday. It's humpy. It's a hump day. I don't know. Yes, I really don't know. How art thou?
I'm good. How are you and everyone else?
Oh, boy, I'm a little stressed. Yeah, I'm a little stressed. I had to take my cat to the vet yesterday, and it turned out that she had to spend a couple of days there. So, hope everything works.
Your cat is not well?
No.
Your pussy is in need of a medical intervention?
Yeah. She went in to take out a tooth and something else in the blood work, so they had to put on
pussy cats need tooth interventions?
It needed tooth intervention.
Oh, I hope she gets well soon.
I hope so too. I really
Very stressful having a sick cat.
Yes. You need a warped mind. Yes.
Do you have
people don't know how warped. I think people know how warped your mind is.
Do you have to pet her and comfort her more?
I have to go there this morning. So yeah.
Was she slept by the vet?
She did, and she'll do that again tonight.
Sleep home?
The cat did not sleep home.
Oh.
No, did not sleep home.
How did you make out?
I was worried. Didn't sleep well last night at all.
I could understand that.
Yeah. I wasn't like Wendell yesterday. I was up all night. No.
Oh.
No, I'm a bit worried.
Is this the first time she's been ill and stepped away from home?
Her, yes.
Oh, so that must be very traumatic for you because your pussycat doesn't sleep away from you at all.
Mm-hmm. No,
you got up this morning, you have no pussycat to feed.
No, that one sleeps with me on my bed every night.
But you just said she was at the vet.
No, but normally she would come and take a sleep on the bed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And cuddle up next to you.
Pretty much. So.
You don't get scratched though.
Oh, nah. She's not like one of those. She's very, very calm.
She's a calm pussycat.
Mm-hmm. I'm just putting fuel into this fire. So anyway, hope everything works.
Good morning, David. Save me, please.
Yeah. Morning, David.
Save me from myself.
Almost called you yesterday to find out something else. But anyway, let's see who sent us hellos here say that. We have Ian Lee saying happy independence as we celebrate our 62nd anniversary come Saturday. DJ Ray, Delaware. Celia, Valencia, you got a little Petter Patters, Maria Celia, B.T. Smith in Goodwood, Tobago, Wayne Bennett. What went on in Goodwood, Tobago yesterday? Wendy and James, Oliver Man Warren, Brent Hackshaw, Marcia Rock in Orlando, Nikisha Pierre out on Tumpuna Road, Rima, Ray, morning Ray, out in West Palm Beach, Florida, Rena Boodoo Jennings, Slick Money Grip, Gloria Gray, Carol Guevara, Business Facade. Yes, Ray, Paul ain't easy at all. CJ in New York, John Cato, good morning to you. On WhatsApp, we have David Nelson, Sankofa, Dan Raj, and my good friend, Bobby. Good morning to you all. Have a great day. I think Bobby is a teacher, so teachers are supposed to report to work today. Is that it?
Some even earlier this week.
Yeah, well, my niece had orientation yesterday, and she goes into the big girls' school.
Very good.
So, she's the funniest thing, eh? So we went to the grocery on Saturday. My nieces came over, and I had to pick up a couple of things in the grocery. And so I picked up Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I love my Belgian chocolate. Even though I stopped 2 containers in the fridge. And I saw the price, and I said, nah, I have 2 in the fridge. That's good. My 4-year-old niece said, Uncle, it's expensive. I said, yes, Kay. She said, it's inflation. I said, a 4-year-old know the word inflation and what it means. So we had a little convo about that in the grocery. I thought that was so
Good morning, Ruben.
What did he say? What did Ruben say?
He's saying, oh, poor kitty.
Well, we won't talk about his kitty.
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, good morning, everyone. You know, Steve and everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I went out to run an errand from the office yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
12, came back at 12:30. Left at 12, came back at 12:30.
Oh, you were in the rain.
And then when I came back, it was not raining. It was overcast.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes after I went back out, and it was pouring rain.
No, that wasn't pouring rain, bro.
I don't know. Look at this. I took out the audio already. So,
yeah.
I mean, in a matter of 20-25 minutes of rainfall in Port of Spain, mayhem ensued.
Yeah. Where is that?
The water coming down from the savannah to South Port of Spain was, I mean, where all this water coming from in 20 minutes?
Yeah.
And then, of course, Richmond Street. People had to move their cars from in front of the Twin Towers.
Oh, yeah.
The promenade.
Yeah.
They moved it. They drove their cars onto the promenade center area because the street in front, as usual, in front of Central Bank Towers, and the side between Central Bank and TSCT building became inundated with water.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you had South Key.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. So it was all kind of rigmarole to get through Port of Spain yesterday.
Yeah, and you see with the midday heat, that's when we get most of the rain, midday. But I mean, that was a different kind of rain. Yes, I could not see anything on the road.
Yeah, but Steve, it didn't fall for more than half an hour.
Yeah, it fell for exactly. Nothing more than half an hour.
So how does half an hour of rainfall result in this?
You know what?
Is it that this is beyond the solving? Because in the audio, I took all the audio, but the vendor was saying she has been selling there for 30 years. And she's saying, please, somebody do something.
You know,
Is it that this is beyond this as a country? Is that what we're suggesting?
You know what I think it is, Paul?
This constant flooding in Port of Spain is beyond this, and we just are incapable of fixing this. Is that what we're saying?
I was thinking about that yesterday, and I'm wondering if the drainage to let the water out to the sea is just too small. So the water cannot freely back off. I was thinking about that.
The water cannot flow if the tide is higher than the level of South Key.
Well, that's the next
Even
thing
if the drains are fixed.
Yeah.
The water will flow northward.
Yeah.
Which
For
means there
years.
needs to be a different type of intervention. People are saying blame climate change. There are cities in the world that are built on water. There are people in the world who have the expertise to do something about this.
My point exactly.
It cannot be just, okay, climate change, and this is what we have to expect for the next 40 years. It cannot be that.
Look,
when we're saying this is beyond this, there's no engineering solution to this that can fix this in the world. None. Is that what we're saying? Or we should just condemn that part of Port of Spain and relocate everybody there?
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Since Jack Warner was the Minister of Works, and I've seen an accident there because the amount of water. If you're eastbound on the Beetham and you're coming up to the Barataria exit, there is a flow of water that goes across the highway. And I've seen a car many years ago hydroplane and crashed into
Richmond Street. This is Richmond Street.
That is Richmond Street. Look at that.
Next to UTT, Unit Trust, sorry.
Unit Trust, yeah. And that always.
And this is a normal thing for there.
Yeah.
Once the rains come down. I mean, cars stall. I mean, it cannot be that this is beyond. This is a country to fix. Is it that's what we're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that what we're saying, that we are incapable of finding an engineering and drainage solution or hydraulic solution to fixing this?
Mm-hmm.
With all the bright people we've created, UE, UTT, USC, SBCS, all over the world, that we cannot say, okay, we do have the expertise, let's hire somebody outside to do it and come up with some comprehensive plan and get a timeline on fixing this. We have to endure this for another 10, 15, 20, 25 years. That's what we're saying?
I don't know.
We have to reach 100 years as a country to fix this? And I am blaming this government because it's going on 20 plus years. So all of them. Really?
Preach, brother, preach.
It was just so frustrating to see. And I'm driving, so I could turn around and go in another direction. What about pedestrians coming out of City Gate?
And you want to touch our water? We've seen rats
what about
running already.
Coming out of City Gate or trying to get to City Gate to get out of the city to go home? What are they supposed to do? What about the vendors on the other side of the road? What are they supposed to just sit down and, okay, well, it rained again, so let me chill out and hope it go down in time.
Yeah, you had to walk with 2 garbage bags to put your foot in as you walk. You really don't want to touch that water.
No, there must be some solution to this. We spoke to Minister of Works and Transport, Ragoobarsingh, multiple times, who said they have this big plan coming and did it. No.
Yeah.
No. I think we can, but it needs a concerted effort and focus. And if we don't have the expertise, find the expertise somewhere in the world. There's build city on river. There's build airport in the sea. There must be some hydrological solution, an engineering solution. Must be. Okay, so we know South Key from Independence Square was once called Marine Square, which means all of that land is probably at some level reclaimed land. We already know it's below sea level, but there are other areas in the world that have built dams and dikes and whatever else, you understand? And have a hydraulic system that can make sure when the rains come or the tide goes high, there's something that goes up. Look at New Orleans. New Orleans is a delta.
Good point.
There are parts of New Orleans. I mean, yes, when there's a hurricane, under those circumstances, there's nothing you can do. But not for 20 minutes of rain. Not for 20 minutes of rain, no. New Orleans is under sea level too. So there's flooding when there's a hurricane that's extreme, but not when they have a little rain. The dam go up, or the levee, I think it's the levee they just call it.
Yeah.
And come on. How much ever it costs? Think about the cost in terms of people's lives and quality of lives and lost business and all of that.
Lost productivity. Because they are floods. By fire services, they're
cost for that, no man. It's worth it as a capital.
No, yeah, exactly.
Well, whatever it is worth it. Really? So the cost would prohibit us and we endure this another 40 years?
Getting in the Port of Spain, my abattoir road there, always floods.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley held a post-cabinet press briefing yesterday.
Ooh, switch there, boy.
They're not necessarily on that. It is what it is. We got to whatever. So he said he's fed up with being blamed for TNT's spiraling crime rate. I think he's also tired of people seeking leniency for criminals. I seem to remember during 2010 to 2015, the Prime Minister, then opposition leader, Dr. Rowley, blaming the UNC and whoever else the partnership to fix crime. Not so? Why is it different now? And I'm not saying by any means Dr. Rowley is to be blamed for the crime, for those who want to misinterpret me. But certainly the executive has to come up with a policy that will grant resources to and assess the capability of the law enforcement agencies to do the job. So when you're in the hot seat, can I take the pressure?
When you're the man in charge, the buck stops with you.
When you're in the hot seat, can I take the pressure? And again, for those in the back of the class who didn't hear, I'm not saying Dr. Rowley is causing the crime. Some people in the back of the class have hard of hearing it, and they see different things. Okay. I don't think anybody's blaming Dr. Rowley for the crime, you know. I think people is blaming they're holding the executive responsible as they would with any administration in power. But I agree with him. The people who, he was a good boy. He was a good girl. I fully agree with him with that. And I agree with him that there are monsters in this country that we have raised, that we have to take responsibility for as a people. Because Jamaica didn't raise them. They didn't come from China. We raised them. You understand? So you see the opining and the don't blame me. Nobody is blaming. I don't think, well, maybe some people are, but I don't think the majority of rational thinking people are blaming the government for the crime, but they are certainly holding the government accountable because you're in charge.
Yeah.
You understand? And that's reasonable. Because when the shoe is on the other foot, whoever is in opposition holds the elected executive accountable. As did Dr. Rowley when Mrs. Prasad was Prime Minister. Am I crazy? Then it was the narrative on, or you change a national security minister every 5 minutes, they change 5, not so?
And that's it.
Wasn't that the narrative?
Yeah.
So what's the difference now?
Commissioners of police.
So what's the difference now?
Various ministers of national security.
So what's the difference now?
Nothing.
You understand? When you're in the hot seat, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
It's not a blaming, but it's accountability and holding people responsible. So
somebody must be held responsible.
Well, I mean, all of us have a part to play, but at the end of the day, the executive is elected to lead, find solutions, and move the country forward with the help of others. It is not their responsibility alone by any means. They're the ones who have the authority over the resources and to make policy and to make decisions in the interests of national security, finance, education, etc., etc., etc. You understand? So, I mean, the crime thing, they really work with me. Because that's why you put yourself up.
Yeah, and I believe one of the television stations did a poll last evening, I saw. Do you feel safe at home? Do you feel safe when you're at home? And only one person said yes.
Because, Steve, conversely, if we were to have a sustained reduction in crime, the very same government would claim victory. Our policies are working. We are the ones who did it, not so? And they would be right to. So you can't have your cake and eat it too.
It just, I don't know, boy.
Understand?
I don't know what to say about crime again. I'm going back to that home
There's nothing
invasion.
much you could say again, but
Yeah,
hopefully
I'm
let's
going.
keep
I'm going
praying
back
and
to that home
hope the
invasion.
authorities. And the home invasion thing is very disturbing. There is clearly a trend upward.
Yeah,
You
and
understand?
the home invasion involves saying, I mean, tall wall, electric fence, cameras everywhere. What else are you to do?
I don't know.
What are you to do again?
Andrew is saying the water pump at Sealots that was sabotaged ever fixed. Was it ever fixed?
Yes, it was fixed. It was fixed.
I don't think 1 or 2 or 3 water pumps is the answer
Yeah,
to flooding.
that tap pump, all that water coming. You remember, Paul and listeners, that water is coming from the northern range, so it's coming
I
down.
told you when I was driving, when I left the office yesterday, we are on Abercrombie Street. I drove up. When I turned across by that square there, if you see in all the streets going down and up had water all across the streets and then drain coming down from the Savannah side. I'm saying, but where is this? Is this coming off the hill? Is there some construction on the hill or something? Is it coming off the Savannah? I don't know. It was the amount of water I saw coming down from the Savannah side was scary.
Yeah.
And then you have the other side of it where the sea, if the sea level is high from South Key coming in. So it's like a confluence of circumstances that it was, I mean, people, you just don't know where to turn at some point. Anyway.
You really need to look at the flooding situation within the capital.
Dr. Rowley also spoke
4
to
square miles. I don't know.
campaign finance reform that came up again in the presser yesterday.
Yeah.
Recommendations from the Elections and Boundaries Commission and Self-Governance of Tobago. Dr. Rowley also announced, well, I'd known before, but Dr. Rowley was the one who had the purview to announce it. Last day of the 4th session of Parliament will be the 9th of September. Parliament will be open Monday 13th. My understanding is there'll be no pomp and pageantry this year. It's just a simple close of one session and reopen of the other session, and the work continues.
Well done.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, well done.
You know, of course, the issue of the coat of arms came up again, and there was drama at the first. I don't know why that video wasn't downloaded at the first public consultation on the placement of the statues, monuments, and other historical signage yesterday at Government Plaza, where a quite offensive statement was made by Frank Ferrier. I don't know if you saw the viral video. Member of the Emancipation Support Committee, Zakia Uzuma Wadada, was on her feet speaking and saying that, making quite profound points that, you know, what do we want our children to focus on? Who do we want our children to feel proud about? She was saying, and I'm paraphrasing it can't be Christopher Columbus and Thomas Picton and them. And Mr. Ferrier interrupted, saying, I disagree with you, which is fine, but he was asked to wait his turn to make a contribution. He continued his offensive discourse and actually shouted when Uzuma Wadada called for Oxford Street to be renamed Kwame Ture Street. He shouted, well, go back to Africa then. Could you imagine? Go back to Africa. I mean, I don't think it could get more offensive than that. And his heart and mind came out of his mouth at that point. Go back to Africa. Imagine that. It's pretty really disgusting, yes? So if everybody goes back to where they came from, it will have nobody here except the indigenous people. You understand? To have some citizens in this country, yeah, that you wonder about. You wonder about. Someone is saying Invaders Bay is the biggest problem for Port of Spain flooding. And I don't know. I'm not an expert.
I read that. I have no idea.
We need to bring in the hydrological experts and engineers to assess the issue and come up with a proper solution.
Oh, and let them fix it too.
Well, I think that's what a solution means. Shall we open the phones?
We shall open our lines All right. So 222-8255, toll free North Americans, 866-525-1099. Maybe I should get a minister on.
Wendell had a second question yesterday that escaped me. Do you remember it? It was a
Oh,
good question. We had two questions yesterday. We
what was
posed
the
the
question?
first question we posed was,
Um,
do you think Kamala Prasad and Gary Gifford will mend fences before 2025? There was another question on some topic, yes,
yeah, that was our poll yesterday.
If anybody remembers, please tell us, including Wendell. And they'll be using your polls back to back. The lines are open.
Yeah, we have some calls.
Let me hear what you think.
Let's grab them. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, Dr. Paul and Steve. How are you? Everybody
Good morning.
Right?
Not bad.
All right. I just want to touch any subject, right? Open forum, right?
Go ahead, yes.
Right. I just want to touch on the pension issue. Because one of the reasons is this, that I remember I talking about my mother. My father worked in a denomination. And he was a principal. And after his death, my mother used to collect his salary from a denomination from Audi, right? But I had an aunt, she was a member of the TNM party caucus, and she always said that regardless of what, you are entitled once you reach the age of 65 to pension. Now, I know business people that have put their business under their family name and are collecting pension. I think this thing has metastasized and gone for so long that we have to be careful we don't open up a Pandora box. So I think the ministry have to clarify that.
Well, caller, I did try to get a hold of that falls under Donna Cox and Minister Donna Cox, and I tried to get her yesterday to no avail. I did speak to other people. Pension is what you get when you retire, right? You put money and you work, you put money in, you get your pension. And then there is the old age, they call it now a grant.
Yes. We had that.
There's a difference. So pension you put in, you get it when you retire. The old age grant is like Richard. Old age, he gets a grant. They have renamed it from what's the name it called yesterday?
Old age pension.
Old age pension to now old age grant. That is what it is.
I just want to interject. You're correct, absolutely correct. But it's not something that has sinking into John public head. They feel they are entitled to that. So I think Donald Cox needs to come.
Yeah.
They feel when they reach that age, they entitled to that regardless of the circumstances again.
Yeah. They need to have a clarification. That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, buddy. All the best. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, pal. What's happening?
I'm good. Dr. Paul, I think, over the years, looking at Port of Spain and the flooding problem there, you have to come to the conclusion that Port of Spain would be, flooding in Port of Spain would be a perennial problem, unless you are willing to spend billions of dollars to fix the capital city where flooding is concerned. Now, the flooding in the city mainly occurs for a 6-month period thereabout. Let's say 5 months thereabout. If you look at the city and some of the construct of buildings and so forth, long ago, Dr. Paul and Steve, long ago, persons used to go under those walkways and clean those walkways. That is no longer taking place. We have moved away. Perhaps we have decided master days are done, and we are now working on top. So what we see we could clean and what we see we can't clean. And I think Jack Warner proposed the tension phone in terms of rectifying the problem in Port of Spain. But one of the contributing factors to the flooding is that when we allocate land that would hold or retain water, and you see buildings going up in these places, you have to ask yourself, are we really serious? And it begs the question in terms of Dr. Paul asking in terms of a hydraulic report. Ragoobarsingh was one for that, where the highway was. and we have seen where the water have moved and have gone to a different location, and it is now affecting woodland seriously, where it used to never flood. So there are a number of factors that we have to put in place. At the end of the day, it's going to cost a lot of money to fix that problem. And the question is that a problem alone for the government, or the private sector should get involved as well? Quickly, on the issue of crime, the government must take the full stick with the issue of crime. You propose in your manifesto the number of issues that you would have put forward to solve the issue. And if you have not managed to do so, then the buck must stop with you. You must take some licks. While I agree that the UNC must play a pivotal part in the passage of legislation, it is more so the government's responsibility to assuage the issue where crime is concerned. And just before I go, Dr. Paul, I think it's obscene, really, that we still have people thinking in this colonial and myopic view that when it has certain decisions to make, the only card they could pull is to go back to Mother Africa or Mother India. Why are these people so prejudicial at this time? We are in 2024, people. We have come a long way. Independence, we are in the cusp of celebrating independence, 62 years. And I think it's it was the poppycock that came out from that individual mouth. I know the resistance was profound, and I know that we are civil people, and we will see what will come out of this.
But he was obnoxious to begin with, even before he made the disparaging statement.
I agree with you. He
didn't want to let the woman continue what she was saying and wait his turn. So he was clearly an indisciplined, obnoxious person to start with.
And his behavior was abhorrent, and it must be rejected. And I am happy that the person was there, put a resistance and rejected such nonsense. Have a good morning.
All right, buddy. Have a good one yourself. It's called, I'll tell you this now. Good morning. Senior Citizens Grant. That's it. Good morning. Going once. Good morning. Twice. Move on. Good morning.
Hey, morning, Paul Richard.
Good morning, Mr. Patrick.
Morning.
Morning. You know, yesterday, I received a post in the mail, so I went by the post office and I collect my documents. It was a property tax.
Very good.
Paul Richard, you went out? Huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, when I open out the documents and I read in, you know, my property tax is $235,296.
What?
Say that again.
Mr. Patrick, you own what? You own Frederick Street?
Well, I went straight across by the place in Aruka, if I remember, Mutual Finance.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the people, like, I won't move it out.
I had a friend who went to query her property tax evaluation, and she said it was a myriad of confused officials who didn't know where to send her, what to do, what was the next step. They're sending you here to go back there, to go back there. And she said it was just this harrowing experience of people, officials not knowing what the process was.
But apparently that was real too, because like them people don't know what's going on. They didn't tell me how I submit a document 2023. As a Miss Lady, the only time I come here was July month. I don't know what document I submit to document.
Mr. Patrick, is the number you called the value of the property or the property tax itself?
Yes, I have it in front of me.
Yeah. Missed how much you had to pay.
Value of the property.
Well, right. So it's 3% of that.
Yeah, but the $235,000
is the value of the property you're talking about, or the property tax?
No, that is the rental value of the property.
Right, but that's not what you have to pay, Mr. Patrick.
No. Anyhow, it's wrong.
But I'm not saying it's not wrong, but I'm saying that you have to go and query it if you think it's wrong.
I don't pay what percent of that, but what I'm saying,
how much you had to pay, Mr. Patrick? How much you have to pay? I missed that. How much you have to pay?
Well, I ain't get no paperwork to pay.
Oh, okay.
They say the annual rental value $253,296. So when I went back, the lady said, but and now too, the PIN number And what I apply for is two different things about it. So these people mixing up people property or something, I think. But I don't see nobody have a property in Trinity City. I don't know. So that was a lot of problem inside the office, brother. There have a lot of problem inside there.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Yeah, I won't
you
disagree.
need to rectify the problem inside there.
And the officials don't know the time to go here, go this, go back there. And
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Banks.
Yes, Paul.
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Do you all think it's trash that stuck up somewhere that the water cannot go back out to the sea, or why do they bring back the litter act? Because you're walking in the street and you're seeing trash all over the place. Try to charge people for littering, because maybe have those plastic cups that don't melt, that somewhere down in the drain. When they move the manhole and they pull out the trash, they don't get all the trash out. So probably they have trash stuck somewhere down there. Because this flooding quick is something else. I don't know what more to say.
There's a lot of trash. There is a lot of trash. I see it when they come in a Port of Spain and they clean inside the drainage. There's just bottles and food containers and boxes. We really have to be serious about this littering thing. And I've seen people litter, and I'm going, don't they think about this before they just throw it out? I don't know. 222-8255, toll-free North Americans, 866-525-1099. Okay, I'm just
Never a
reading.
dull moment.
No.
But, I mean, yes, something needs to be done about that flooding situation in Port of Spain. Something sustainable. It can't continue like that. It just cannot continue like that.
No, it can't.
This is
For
Rice
years.
Road now too.
By St. Augustine is flooded. In Champlain, St. Joseph, it flooded.
And yes, to the persons who comment today, climate change is part of it, but
we need to adapt.
But we need to find solutions. You know, I don't know. How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Never a dull moment. Never a dull moment. Never a dull moment. That is just very harrowing to look at.
That is the gate there.
I mean,
all it floods into the gate.
It's literally over a foot of water.
Mm-hmm. And that water's come up faster.
Mm-hmm. You have to get a boat. City get PTSD to invest in dinghies and pull them out when the water comes up to get people across.
Mm-hmm.
And charge you $2 a trip. It might be a revenue generating initiative. You never know, because it's going to happen again next week.
Good morning, caller. Good again today,
guys.
Morning.
Morning. Yeah, yesterday was the first time I witnessed Port of Spain underwater. Listen, I got into my car. It could have been around after 12, and I tried to drive across Independence Square. Traffic from by the express straight down. I said, what the hell is this?
Mm-hmm.
So when I reached Henry Street, I said, let me go down to Henry Street and get on to South Key, and I will head west. When I decide to turn, I'm seeing, I say, wait, you know how they say when people in the desert and like they thought they saw water? I say, wait, that is water down there? Listen, good thing I didn't actually turn in. I kept going. Every street towards that South Key was underwater. But what shocked me is when I saw water in front of the treasury. I have never seen.
It's not the first time. This is about the fourth time I've seen that place in front of the Treasury
Really?
building and
I've seen
also in front of the Twin Towers flooded out.
I was so shocked. Well, everybody had to head up Abercrombie Street. I said, Lord, that's why I don't come in Port of Spain with my vehicle, you know. But I had no other choice to do it yesterday, and Lord have mercy, it was terrible. So I don't know what they could do to solve that South Key problem, but my goodness, this country cannot handle, I wouldn't even say a hurricane, a tropical storm. We cannot handle that. And I want to say to Gary Griffith, don't say Kamala Prasad Bissessa is behaving like Biden, because before the 2025 election, I am sure you're going to join up with her. So what she said yesterday, I mean, you keep boasting, oh, I got the highest, you got the highest in the interview. But look, the same person you want to have alliance with is saying how you were handpicked and the three other people. Oh my God, listen, this thing is, I don't know. Lord, Richard, you sure have material to do a play based on what's going on right now between Gary Griffith and Kamala Prasad Bissessa. Come with it, Richard. You all have a blessed day.
All right,
Same
thank
to
you. All the lines are lit up, but we're going into
Okay,
all your
6:47. Let's do the newspapers.
Mhm.
It is Thursday, 29th August. Let's start with the Express for today. Make sure Ragoobarsingh make a late appearance. No, he hasn't. Deadly play was 16-year-old Aliyah Santu killed by an intruder or friend. Her boyfriend was at Kaylee's funeral. PM heading for checkup in the U.S. Don't blame me for crime, says Dr. Rowley. Craftsman and jeweler Julian Bishop has been selected by government to redesign the country's coat of arms to include a steel pan. Clash over Columbus during public consultation. TNT has lost its soul. And let's move now to The Guardian. Don't blame me. Urges citizens to hold criminals accountable for deadly acts. Tearful Moruga farewell for murdered dad and daughter. Friend, time to stand up against crime. Drama at first consultation on statues and monuments. Jeweler to design new coat of arms. Kamala unlikely to support PAN bill in parliament. Ex-PAN Trinbago boss blame UDCOT for abandoned headquarters. And we move to the Newsday now. PM reveals government election year agenda. Tutor tells teachers don't report for work if your assigned school is closed. PNM writer comment on Constitution report. Movie Town obeys court order, pays the $3 million. Artist Julian Bishop chosen to draw coat of arms. And government continues search for Gulfstream owner. And Anika and Enrico Guerra laid to rest in Moruga. So those are trending stories on the front pages of your Express, Guardian, and Newsday for today, Thursday, the 29th of August, 2024.
All righty. Before we get into this morning's poll, let's get the results of a poll from yesterday. We asked you, do you think Kamala Prasad Bissessa and Gary Griffith will mend fences in time for the upcoming general elections in 2025? Well, the votes are in. 58%, 5-8, said no.
Well, I have two potential questions.
Let's hear them there, Pablo.
One is, will you approve this government spending billions to fix flooding in Port of Spain? And two, should the government be held accountable for spiraling crime?
Let's go with crime. Or maybe we should, I'll take 3 votes. Should we go with crime or fixing flooding? 3 votes. Let's go right now. And we'll pick it. You pick the poll this morning. I say crime.
Either way, it works for me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get 3 votes on that. Just put crime or blame.
I didn't say blame, I said accountable.
Well, okay. Andre says crime. We get one more. Let's see. We get one more crime. We go with it. Flooding. It's even. One more. Crime or flooding? Which one? Crime. All right. That's it. Let's go with crime. Thank you, guys. Always count on you. All right. So let me just get it up here. Right. So our morning poll. Should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime? Yes or no? All right. Give us a call, 222-8255. Yes or no? North Americans, toll free, 866-525-1099. On Facebook, on YouTube, on WhatsApp at 318-1021. All right. Okay. When you WhatsApp, you can always put your name next to it so I can, know who it is. Howard.
Either right, Steve, or you're writing.
I'll write. I'll write it. I'm already set for it. Howard said, "Oh, you know what I didn't? Right. Let's do this instead. I'm changing up my thing here. All right. Howard says yes. Let's see. Okay. Ooh, we had some here already. All right. Hanif Daniel says no. Brent Hackshaw says yes. No, Hanif Daniel says yes. Okay, so I'll scratch you off here, put you there. Richard P. Knight, yes. Beefy Smith, Goodwood Tobago. Okay, thank you. Wanted crime. Carlisle Cupid, yes. Lester Craigwell, yes. Jim, yes. Catherine Henry, yes. Lyndon Leslie, yes. Ishautin Malik, yes. Julia S. Batiste, yes. Beefy Smith, yes. Let's go WhatsApp here. Black Pearl, morning Black Pearl, says no. Roger Sewing, yes, of course. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Black Pearl. Should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime in TNT? Yes or no? Gloria Gray, yes. All right. Should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime? Yes or no? Let's grab this call. Good morning. Good morning.
Yes, no. Deal with the parents.
Okay, thank you. All right. Cheryl Henry says yes. Lester Craigwell, you have to vote. Right. Gloria Gray says yes.
Did you read in Jamaica the sad story of a 16-year-old who lost his life? He went to spearfish and they found his body without head and an arm, apparently a shark attack.
Ooh, no, I did not read that at all.
Horrible. It was very. His dad was on television talking. And just
when was that?
Oh, earlier this week, I think over the weekend.
Wow. Ugh. I just say that. Whatever happened to the guy that went spearfishing out to the coast in Manzanilla? We haven't heard anything about that. Lorna. Morning, Carly. Morning, Indy. Yes. Thank you, Lorna. Cascade St. Anne's. Yes. Dre. Yes. Alistair Hart, yes. Oh, I like when you put your names to it. Wonderful, guys. Let's see. What else we got here? We have lots of votes here. Lavana says yes. Gerard Garcia, yes. Kenny and Harlem, I say no to the poll. Thank you, Kenny. Mrs. R, no. David Wares, yes. Andre says yes. Carol Guevara, yes. All right. Should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime in T and T. Good morning,
Morning,
Cole.
Roman.
All right, good morning, guys.
Do not need a national security ministry.
Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. All right. CJ New York says yes. Up north. That always sound like a calypso. Eh? Up north. Up north. Says yes. Let's see. Pearl Cordis. New. Okay. Ian Lee. Nope. Thank you, Ian. Should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime in TNT? Yes or no? All right. You have 3.5 minutes to vote. Of course, we have news at the top of the hour. Of course, Avi will be in for that. Should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime in TNT? Rich, all right, then ready we are. So
Yeah, well, I figured, gotta join in too late.
yeah. 222-8255. North Americans toll free 866-525-1099. Of course, on WhatsApp at 318-1021. Of course,
Did your kitty cat sleep home last night?
oh, geez, on ages. He has dogs.
Okay. Because Steve's pussycat didn't sleep home at last night.
No, Pussycat is not well.
Oh, really?
Pussycat has a toothache.
No, apart from they told me something with her kidneys. So
Steve didn't sleep well at all. You have no kitty cat to sleep with last night.
No. Wayne Bennett says no. Lincoln says Paul.
Lincoln, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm trying to get the Minister of Works on this morning. Let me see.
Just say what, Steve? Are we planning?
We'll give him our suggestions.
He has a whole ministry of suggestions. So
Yeah. Beauty Culture says no. Miss Ingrid, Tucson, Arizona, yes. Hector says yes. Thank you, Hector. All right. Give us a call, 222-8255. Toll free North Americans, 866-525-1099. Give us a call. Give us a call. Tell us what you think. Should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime in Trinidad and Tobago? Yes or no? Of course, our poll will stay up till tomorrow morning on our mobile app, which you should have by now, just for Power 102 Digital, whatever platform you're on, or on our website at power102fm.com. Riri. Okay, Riri. All right, Lincoln. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Morning, everyone.
good morning.
Every year, the government spend billions of dollars on national security. Shouldn't there be some accountability for that? For those who say no, I say yes.
All right. Thank you. Riri says yes. Thank you, Riri. All right. Our morning poll. Should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime in TNT? Yes or no? All right. Let's see if we get some votes before Evie walks in. Oh, she's walking in. I can see the future. I can see her in 3, 2, 1. There she is. Gosh, I'm good. I'm so good. Did anybody win Lotto last night? I wonder. Yeah. Lotto has gone up to $12 million. 12 million buckaroos. All right, Evie is in. Let me just check one more time if you have any more. Yeah. We have Anthony Miguel saying yes. Finbar Collins saying no. Thomas Diaz says yes. Rena Budu Jennings says no. And one more vote came in. Vincent in Birmingham says yes to the poll. All right, so let's get into our major news. Of course, Evie is in.
This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says he's fed up with being blamed for TNT's spiraling crime rate. The new parliamentary term starts September 13th. September 9th is the last day of the fourth session, and government dismisses claims it's acting in a high-handed manner concerning the Code of Arms adjustment. Details in a moment. This is news at 7 o'clock on Power 102 Digital. I'm Avril Sinjel Bob. Good morning. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says that he's fed up with being blamed for TNT's spiraling crime rate, adding he's also tired of people seeking leniency for some criminals. Speaking at a post-cabinet media briefing at the Whitehall, Port of Spain yesterday, Dr. Rowley said those contributing to high crime should not be given a pass, especially those who harm children. He also suggested that attributing high crime to office holders is baseless, while he condemned the real monsters responsible for the bloodshed against law-abiding citizens. Insisting that he has no empathy for these criminals, Dr. Rowley said for a fellow citizen to have seen a child in somebody's hand or in someone's presence and deliberately discharge a firearm knowing they're going to kill that child, they are a different kind of devil. He said, unfortunately, we have those in this country. Meanwhile, the funeral of Enrico Andy Guerra and his 5-year-old daughter took place at the family's home at the corner of Moruga Main Road and Puri Road in St. Mary's Village, Moruga, on August 28th. The father and daughter were side by side and both dressed in white in the same casket. Hundreds of mourners, as well as the police, attended. Guerra, also known as Rico, owned Enrico's Corner Mart at the front of the house. 34-year-old Guerra and his daughter Anika were gunned down on August 21st at around 9:45 p.m. Anika turned 5 on August 13th and was a past preschooler at Blooming Scholars Kindergarten in Princestown. Campaign finance reform, reviews and recommendations from the Elections and Boundaries Commission and self-governance for Tobago are some of the matters on the government's agenda which will be brought to the Parliament during the new term. This was disclosed by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley while speaking at the weekly post-cabinet news briefing held at Whitehall in Port of Spain on Wednesday. The Parliament will meet on Monday, September 9th, which will be the last day of the fourth session. However, Dr. Rowley explained the new parliamentary session starts on September 13th and these matters will be addressed.
There's a report that's been laid according to the requirements of the law under the Representation of the People Act, where the EBC had been required to lay before the Parliament some review and some recommendations with respect to the establishment of constituencies and the adjustment of boundaries and polling divisions and so on. That was in the Parliament and laid for quite some time. It has to be debated, and we'll dispense with that very quickly in the new session which starts on the 13th.
He said autonomy for Tobago will be another opportunity to deal with the work of the committee.
That has been in the Parliament for quite some time, and we have saved it going forward. And this will be the last opportunity to do that. It has been said, I think we've taken steps already to save it. It will come into the next session, and it is my intention to have that work of the committee concluded very early in the next session. So we'll meet on Monday the 9th to end the current session, save some bits of work, and then go on. And on the 13th, the work of the new term, the last term, begins, and that will have in it the conclusion of the work of that committee, which has the two Tobago bills.
Meanwhile, the government will allow the parliament to have its say and input on plans to change the coat of arms, replacing the 3 Columbus ships with the national instrument, the steel pan. Prime Minister Dr. Rowley says the ruling administration will follow the process on this issue, and he dismissed claims from some quarters it is acting in a high-handed manner on this move. He said the coat of arms issue is just one matter, but will not override other areas of national importance and development.
There's no way that can be done without the involvement of the parliament. So what is the story about the government and the party that was told about it is in fact acting inappropriately? You know how that has to be done? The parliament has to be told what the government wants to do. It is in the parliament that the public business is ventilated under law.
Questioned by a reporter on the issue of costs to do such a move, Dr. Rowley said it will not be an expensive venture.
And I even said 6 months, specifically referring to stationery, because every government department now has stationery. And instead of throwing it away because the government say we change the logo, over that 6-month period, you keep using up what you have. And then when you print a new stock, you print the new one. So there's no question of unnecessarily engaging in millions of dollars.
On another issue, the Prime Minister said a lot of financial support has been given to the pan fraternity and is pleased the manufacturing of steel pan is taking place in Diego Martin. There was drama at the first public consultation on the placement of statues, monuments, and other historical signage yesterday after one member of the audience used a phrase deemed to be offensive by some in the audience. Not even half an hour had passed during the consultation at the government campus Plaza Port of Spain before disruption occurred. The incident played out after the view of Zakia Uzoma Wadada of the Emancipation Support Committee was shut down by another member of the audience, Frank Ferreira. Uzoma Wadada had called for a change of statues, monuments, and other historical signage to people of importance to Trinbagonians. She added, who we want to be proud of and who we want our children to know cannot be Picton or Christopher Columbus. During her contribution, however, Ferreira interrupted saying, quote, "I disagree with you. You are rambling," end quote. He was told to wait his turn to contribute by the moderator, D.K. Rostan. He did not, however, and as Uzoma Wadada called for the renaming of Oxford Street to Kwame Ture Street, Ferreira exclaimed, quote, "Well, go back to Africa then," end quote. This comment did not sit well with the other groups in the audience who called for him to be put out of the session. Activist Shabaka Kambod interjected, quote, "Mr. Chairman, he asked you to go back to Africa. At this time, I think it is a little beyond repair," end quote. Poet and cultural activist Onto Springer shouted that he be put out, but Ferreira did not stop there and during his contribution scolded the panel and audience for what he believed was their one-sided view of history. He questioned why Trinbagonians would want to make Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture, a hero. You are listening to news on Power 102 Digital to 7 o'clock. Former United National Congress local government councillor Jason Ali, who has defected to the People's National Movement, was yesterday physically removed to the PNM side in the Council of Superior Borough Corporation. This follows his screening for the constituency of Faizabad by the PNM for the 2025 general election on Friday. 2 Thursdays ago, Ali, the councillor for Superior West Faizabad, resigned from the UNC, claiming he was being victimized since his decision to contest a national executive post for the team led by Mayaro MP Rushton Parry at the party's internal polls on June 15th. Well, finally, here's weather news for the period today till midnight. Trinidad and Tobago, partly cloudy and occasionally cloudy conditions accompanied by periods of shower or rain over some areas. There's also the medium to high chance of isolated thunderstorm activity in a few areas. Nighttime partly cloudy with lingering showers. Gusty winds and street or flash flooding are possible in the vicinity of heavy downpours. There is a yellow level weather alert that is presently in effect. Expected temperature high of 32 degrees Celsius at Piarco International Airport and 30 degrees Celsius at Crown Point in Tobago. Currently it's 26 degrees Celsius at Piarco and 27 at Crown Point. Recapping your headlines to 7 o'clock, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says he's fed up with being blamed for TNT's spiraling crime rate. The new parliament's term starts on September 13th. September 9th is the last day of the 4th session, and government dismisses claims it's acting in a high-handed manner concerning the coat of arms adjustment. I'm Avril Sintil Bob. That was news at 7 o'clock on Power 102 Digital. There's more news coming up in detail at 12 noon and an update at 8 o'clock this morning. For more details, log on to power102fm.com.
Up to date and credible. Power 102 Digital.
All right. Thank you so much, Avril, for our major news. You can join her again. Come at 8 o'clock for our news brief. All right. Quickly, let's take a look at what's happening traffic-wise. Let's start down San Fernando, make our way up north. Oh, boy. Heavy traffic leaving San Fernando. Yeah. Heavier as you pass Claxton Bay, heading towards Sugar Gorners. All right. That Montrose Main Road is a bit heavy. Rivulet Road is a bit heavy. Yep. School is certainly starting to come back online. Valencia Stretch got some volume. Santa Rosa, heavier as you head towards Maloney. Trinidad City to UE, not too bad. From the interchange to Barataria congestion, but traffic from Barataria headed in Port of Spain. Eastern Main Road, usual spots, so starting from Arima Old Road. Okay? Yeah. Traffic is beginning to build. All right. Let's see if we have any more votes on our morning poll. Let's see. Anderson Matthews says yes. Anthony Tinto, good morning to you. Anthony Tinto says yes. Right. Let's see what's up now. Anthony from Toronto says yes. Vincent, I did Vincent. Oh, I did Vincent already. No, did I? I just check. Vincent says from Birmingham says yes. And Trevor in Arima says no. All right. All right. So we have our votes in. We got 49 votes this morning. 49. And out of 49, 12 said no. And 37 said yes. Of course, our morning poll was, should the government be held accountable for the spiraling crime in TNT? 12 said no. 37 said yes.
Well, they have 2 ministers of national security now. Eh?
Yeah. Correct.
Well, it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, governments are generally held responsible for spiraling crime or the crime situation in most countries.
Well, the question came from the fact that the Prime Minister said don't blame him for crime. And I said earlier on, I don't think people are blaming him per se as much as holding government accountable for a seeming lack of progress in managing crime.
Yeah, because you're the one allocating the resources.
And when you were in opposition, you spoke to the UNC's management of crime.
Yeah.
Not so?
Yep.
So how is it different now?
You can't escape it.
How is it different now?
Yeah, it kind of relates to the poll that we would have asked either earlier this week or sometime last week when we said, does the PNM run the risk of losing the general election in 2025?
Yeah, because
of crime. And I think wasn't the majority said yes, they run the risk.
Remember the outcome of the vote, but yes, it's very similar because at the end of the day, when crime is an issue, crime was an issue in the local government election. You understand? And it is a big election issue. So is it a matter of blaming? As I said earlier, and I was very careful to say, it is not that people think the Prime Minister is causing the crime. You understand? No. But certainly the executive has the control of the purse strings. They create policy. They basically choose the commissioner of police through parliament because of the majority. You understand?
Yep.
The line minister, I don't know this is correct, but has remit over the commissioner of police. That's the correct statement. You understand?
Crime affects politics.
Yeah.
And so that's indisputable.
So trying to get away from some sort of responsibility in it is, to me, crazy.
Politics. And you could see it in something like, for example, in some states in the United States, people lose office because of crime.
But on the other side of it, Richard, if there was success, the government would claim victory.
Yes. Yes, that's the
It's
flip
our
side.
policies did this, and our foresight and astuteness did this and that.
And rightfully so.
And rightfully so. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, or, you understand? Come on.
So I think, so I think that the
and to use the word blame, I think, is inappropriate. Nobody blaming him, but I mean, I guess some quarters they would say yes, politically, you know. But you're going to be held accountable for the management of the national security of citizens. That's part of the game, part of the deal. They say you're going to be held responsible for how education is going or agriculture.
Are responsible for the security of your citizens.
Mm-hmm.
That is implied in the governance of any country. You could call it homeland security, you could call it national security, whatever it is, you have that as part of your remit.
Mm-hmm.
How safe do people feel is one of the barometers that's checked.
And there's a reason why the papers put it on the front page this morning, because it's a striking statement.
It's on the front page of the Guardian. I did have papers. I was getting something happened with my email this morning, and I was getting zero. And well, one of the newspapers has it as the headline. The Guardian had it. The Newsday, PM reveals election year agenda, and Express who killed Aliyah. So the Guardian certainly had it. Don't blame me. In terms of the headline on the newspapers this morning. But
never read them. Did you see the flood? Were you in Port of Spain yesterday?
No, I wasn't. No.
Good thing.
I saw some of the videos. Well, I mean, I didn't really see them. I just saw them on news. But this is South Key?
This is Rice Road.
Okay, right, yes. There always has a problem at the end.
Not the only place now. This is South Key.
The South Key pictures were ridiculous.
That's South Key, and this is not first, second, third, fourth, 10th time with South Key. South Key gets like this very quickly.
Yeah, they never seem to be able to resolve the pace at which water needs to exit for South Key not to flood.
But as we were saying earlier on, if we don't have the expertise here, there's expertise in New Orleans, in Venice, in Amsterdam, in Japan. There's expertise around the world that deals with low-lying areas, primarily areas that are landlocked under sea level, or maybe on a delta, or maybe on reclaimed land, and they've put systems in place. Barring a hurricane, New Orleans doesn't really flood like that. Because they understand the hydrology of the area of the system, and they put systems. If it is beyond us, let us get the expertise. So the other question this morning was going to be, but people chose the crime question. Would you approve government spending billions to deal with flooding in Port of Spain? You understand? Because it may cost billions, but people may say that's not a problem if you can fix it.
But we spent so much money already, Paul.
Yes, well, clearly unsuccessfully.
So, what is the barometer that's going to make it different this time?
Yeah, clearly unsuccessfully. Well, success or no success?
That's unacceptable.
Look at this. This is HDC. How? I mean, what really? And if we went off a one-off thing, it's not. It's happening more and more. This is from Unit Trust Corporation on Richmond Street.
Yeah, Edward. This is Edward or Richmond?
This is the one on the western side of Unit Trust Corporation.
Right, Richmond. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is another one too.
Regularly.
You kind of know them, eh? If you're regular in Port of Spain,
and now more and more in front of the Twin Towers, more and more.
You know where to avoid.
Oh.
So you kind of, if you're mapping your way out of town, you would say, nope. This may be a route. This may be a route in your mind as you're driving to try and get out, because you know where those areas are. And they continue to
if
be.
you don't know, you better have a 4x4.
So obviously they need to do additional work, because whatever work that they did is not obviously working with the current speed of the kind of weather that you're getting.
Precisely.
So you need to do something else.
As I said before, we are not the only country who has these issues. And there are other countries around the world that we may not have the expertise here, and that's fine. But we can certainly source the expertise to do a proper assessment of what the overall problem is and come up with some sustainable solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's like not brain surgery. We do it for other sectors. We bring in foreigners to deal with national security, to train police. You understand? We bring in so many experts. Let's do what we have to do. Whew. Can we open the phone lines if you have a guest, Steve?
Well, we have the University of the West Indies.
Do they have hydrologists that are accustomed to dealing with these sorts of issues?
Well, main engineering department is in UV St. Augustine, eh? So they should do it as a paper, as an exercise. Let's solve the problems on South Key. What do you recommend?
Let's open up the line. 222-8255, toll free North America. It's 866-525-1099. Yeah. All right, we have some calls. Let's grab them. Good morning.
Good morning. Steve, is it possible you could send home who is responsible for this blinking TV? I can't watch a good show for the longest while. Hello?
Yeah. Is it only on Me TV or all your channels?
No, only on Me TV.
Yeah, that is out of our control.
But send them home or something, man, because since Alexa spoiled, I was banking on the TV, but now I can't even bank on the TV.
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you there, but I do apologize.
I have to go and get my Alexa fixed, yes?
Yes.
You
probably have to check the Alexa, check the internet for Alexa, and you might get that. That might solve your problem.
So the M&E TV is like the flooding on South Key.
Mm-hmm. Good morning, Peter Lewis.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Good morning, Peter Lewis.
Yeah, morning, Peter Lewis. Morning, caller.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Great show as always.
Thank you.
The current Minister of Finance, more than 20 years ago when he was Minister of Works, I remember clearly he stating that he knew what was the problem and what was causing the flooding in South Key. Okay, and therefore, I suppose if you knew, you would be able to come up with a solution. But as you all are clearly seeing, 20 plus years later, and we still have this flooding problem.
Remember, he's not now the Minister of Works, he's the Minister of Finance.
Yeah, now he's the Minister of Finance, right? And we still have the flooding problem. And as always, we always resort to blaming the people about throwing old fridge and garbage in waterways, and that is responsible for the flooding. That's how they want to attack the issue.
Well, that's part of it, to be fair. That's not the only reason, but that's part of it.
Yeah. But Portishead was also built on reclaimed land. But as you rightly say, Dr. Paul, it have experts in the world out there who can help or at least alleviate this problem. It's similar to the Mayaro-Manzanilla Road, where you have that annual flooding around during the wet season. And for the life of me, people keep asking, how could we solve this? But there are experts in the world that could take care of that Mayaro-Manzanilla problem. And with the latest work done on the road, hopefully that problem, but we'll see in October, November if that problem is really solved. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Political correct. If my figures is wrong, but I seem to recall we paid somebody or another, I believe it was $15 million to do a feasibility study. So know if we could, if rapid rails would work in Trinidad and Tobago.
If what could work?
Rapid rails. If we pay
I
that,
can't remember how much it was, but we did pay for a feasibility study, yes.
Right? So you're right. I'm saying that to say that you're right. We can bring in the engineers or the designers to stop these flooding problem in Port of Spain. Right? But Paul, forgive me here because I am going to be asking you questions randomly. On the hope that maybe we could get an answer when you could follow up with the questions in Parliament when you meet the ministers and them and ask the questions. So maybe you could give us a feedback because in the absence of, I look at you as my voice in the Parliament. So don't find out just asking a strange questions.
You have I'm sure you have an MP also. Eh? I'm not your MP. I'm just a humble servant.
Yeah. Of the people, because you're independent senator, so you represent the people.
Yeah. I remember there was a big hooray about going on right road, and citizens were clapping and cheering for that. And in my mind, I was like, what are you doing on right road? What are you going to move the buildings on the side of right road? How is that going to be possible? And the sycophants and them clap and cheer and blow horn and all kind of things for that foolishness. Big people telling big people nonsense and we clapping and cheering for that. And years after, we're still waiting for right to start to widen.
Why are you calling the people sycophants?
Because that's what they are. You can't hear
because they choose to support a particular initiative, they're sycophants.
Because they choose to support nonsense. When you hear nonsense and you believe in nonsense and you know it's nonsense and it's still big because it's your party, yes, you're going down with the nonsense, that is what qualifies you as a sycophant.
All right. Yeah.
Lincoln, did you have your coffee this morning?
No, in Tobago.
Did your pussycat also sleep out? You're very cranky.
In Tobago having a nut cake right now.
Steve's pussycat slept out. Did your pussycat sleep out also? You're both a little cranky this morning.
My pussycat's fine. I'm sure it's fine at home.
In Tobago.
All right. Enjoy Tobago. Go look for Beefy Smith in Goodwood, Tobago. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Two things. This flooding. Since with Mr. Jack Warner times, you're talking about some pumps to pump water out of Port of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I keep asking myself, the kind of way that this water is in Port of Spain, is it really that nobody just studying it and just say, well, according to what Paul was saying this morning, we got to live with that for the next 20 years or the next.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
apparently?
Because I doubt that it is that nobody really studying that or making know. There had to be something wrong with that issue because, I mean, it's not that we would just leave it just so and just something had to be. I don't know, but there's something that we're not hearing about or we're not talking about because that cannot be. That watching that water all the time and just leaving it like that and saying, well, we can't do nothing and that. I don't think that is the case. It has something else behind that. And lastly, this thing about the pension and the grant. You know, I work in the government service for almost 30 years. I resigned. I paid my national insurance. I'm getting a pension from a gratuity pension, not a old age pension. But the man who it would mean that I would have contributed to the society. Now there are people who haven't worked, or I know people who haven't worked because I'm 68 years of age, and getting the grant or whatever. Now, is it fair? I just asking is it fair that a person who would have worked all those years contributed to society, work now to get his pension and contributed to the national pension, that you deny him? You deny him all his pension. And the man who haven't done anything would get it because he don't have a job or he didn't put anything in place. I just ask it, is that a fair Is that a fair way to go?
I think he would get a senior citizens grant.
Well, yes, but regardless of what you're getting, you as the person who would have contributed for NIS and getting a pension, once it reached around 6,000, you're not getting anything. You're not entitled. So what I'm saying, the person who would have contributed to work and whatnot, he's not entitled and he's not getting anything. But the fellow who didn't work for years, because I know people who haven't worked for never hit a stroke.
You're confusing me. Because if you worked and you have made the 750 minimum payments to NIS, you would get an NIS payment and you can still get the senior citizens grant. It's just that it's they look at how much you get from NIS, and if it's lower than they pull you up to at least the minimum.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you would have worked and you contributed 750 contributions, and through your work you resign, you would now be getting a pension you don't be getting a pension from your job itself. A pension, not a pension from your job, a gratuity, and that coupled together with national insurance would reach a certain amount. You're not entitled for the grant.
Because you may actually cumulatively between your pension and your NIS getting more than the senior citizens grant.
Yeah, but what I'm asking is, listen what I'm asking. The person who would have contributed to the society for all this time, as compared with the gentleman or person who didn't contribute or never work at it and would get the pension, is it fair to the man who would have contributed? That's what I'm asking. Because we remember national insurance, he work and pay for that, gratuity, he work for that.
Yeah, but those are two separate. That's separate from the senior citizens grant. The senior citizens grant is a means test. What are you suggesting that the senior?
Is it a fair? I'm just asking. Is it a fair way?
No, but I'm not understanding what you're asking. That's what I'm trying to ascertain. Are you suggesting that beyond the pension and the NIS that you're getting, that you should, in addition, get the senior citizens grant? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm asking. If it is fair to a person who would have contributed in that sense, as compared to the person who would not have, not that the person who haven't worked or whatever shouldn't get anything. But I'm just asking.
Well, I think it's it's a more complex than you're making it, because there are many nuances. People may have contributed to the society in different ways. Because they didn't have an 8 to 4 job like you may have had, does not mean that you can make a blanket statement they never work in a day in their lives. That's just a kind of catchphrase that people like to use. But the reality is, as a country, you have to look at your senior citizen pool and see who needs the assistance in living expenses moving forward. That's why you have means tests in terms of accessing different types of grants. So you will have people who have disability issues. They can avail themselves of disability grants because the state recognizes
I agree with that.
They have to have certain access. You have public assistance grants because there's some people who are going through very tough times, and the state understands that there is a responsibility collectively.
Yes, I don't mean to cut you. What I'm saying,
they are all. That's what I'm saying.
They are not entitled, or they shouldn't. I'm not saying that. What I'm asking is the person who would have paid and what, although they said they would have, the person who would have paid and work and reach a certain amount. Is it fair to deny him that? No, not that the person who disabled disabled or whatever shouldn't get. I'm not saying that. But when you deny a person who would have contributed like that to the society,
well, the only reason the person would be denied is if they don't meet the means requirements.
Well,
if you're above the means requirements, it means you do not meet the level for that assistance.
It's not an arbitrary denial. it will be a denial based on not meeting certain benchmarks. If you are getting a certain amount already, that's why Richard said there was a means test involved to try and equalize the situation. People who really don't need it, based on the outcome of the means test, would probably be denied or they'd get less. So I think that's what Richard is trying to say.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Well.
No, I get you.
Yeah,
I get you though in the ideal world, because I remember
Thank you.
I remember at one point the People's Partnership, when they were joining up, and I remember part of the COP's contribution to that People's Partnership, or what they had said, was that same senior citizens grant would be available across the board to all senior citizens at age 65, regardless of whether you were getting a pension or not, from the state. That in terms of what you are talking about, well, the last caller, not you, Paul, in terms of the last caller, that it should be equitable, that in other words, you're saying it should be an additional bonus beyond what you already get because you contributed to the society. So that $3,500 should be an additional bonus to your income moving forward post age 65. And there was that was on a manifesto at one point, that was a suggestion that across the board, everybody at age 65 gets that $3,500, regardless of what their income was. But of course, when you came into power, it's not feasible from a financial point of view in terms of what the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago produces to pay that kind of that payment.
All right.
But it was something that was in somebody's manifesto. I remember that.
All right. Let's go. Good morning.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Let me just make a brief comment on that. Now, the gentleman is correct in asking that question, but I would answer by saying to him that the world is not fair, but they try to do things to manage things. Because I was listening to him, and I know of a particular gentleman who, over the last few years, I've been seeing him living in the pavilion on the recreation ground. And only to find out that he was a regular in the community, but he was incarcerated continuously for like housebreaking and that kind of thing, theft. And now he's there, elderly, and he's receiving a pension while living in the pavilion, And we communicated, and I look at him at the, and I said in my mind, I said, look how he was delinquent most of his life, and now he's receiving a pension because somebody on the recreation ground was saying, the man's so cheap he wouldn't even pay a rent, from the pension. He living on the ground then, But that's just life, No, I really call about the flooding issue. Now, most things like that would have an engineering solution, but realistically, it would require a sort of barrier between the sea and the city, all along the port area, all going way down maybe to Cookery, all because remember, Rising Road is reclaimed land, and all coming up there now, so that in effect, the only reason why that probably wouldn't be done maybe in the next 30 years or even beyond is because of the costs. In that, when you put that retaining thing, you have to have a pump system to take the water, to assist in getting the water over that and putting it beyond the sea. And you must have sluice gates, because if you put it over the sea, within the sea, and you do have sluice gates, it will come right back in. So the thing is, it's possible, but the monumental cost of that and the kind of disruptions that would need to take place, is so substantial that I don't think any government, looking at it realistically, will say they will do it. It come like what they say, the Mississippi River will always flood in some areas, but on the average, it might flood every 5 years, and it's cheaper to clean up every 5 years rather than try to attempt to solve it through an engineering solution. And I feel we in a kind of a situation like that where we certainly do have the funds now,
And if we have it down the road, it still would be a question. So,
Caller, can I ask you a
we're in
question?
a difficult situation. Yeah.
Is there some data that you're quoting from that tells you that we can't afford it, or what the cost is projected to be, or what the solution is projected to be?
I remember looking at Dr. Emu Minet's report, which is maybe about, I remember him discussing that about 40 years ago. And part of that was included in the plan. Apart from upgrading the drainage infrastructure kind of underneath the city, there's also a need to kind of...
You know what I think where a lot of the frustration comes from? Nothing is being said.
I didn't hear that.
I said part of the frustration of the population is that there's no information about it coming out from the government.
Yeah, well, that is true. That is true.
And that's part of the problem, is that, okay, we're working on it. We have an assessment going on. We're doing a feasibility study for a solution. It may cost this. We have options. There's no information coming out. It's just take it every day.
So the thing is, I think what they could do is try to make that document public. I don't know how it is now wrong much, but I remember him talking about that in certain lectures and things. And he was sort of the go-to person at the time, you know. And but that is part of it, and that would be a substantial cost. So, you know, I would like to hear a discussion on it and maybe upgrade it, or that kind of discussion, because there might be other issues that they could introduce now that weren't available when he formulated that intervention some maybe 50 years ago. But when he was talking about it, was already maybe a decade old.
All right. Have a good one. All the best. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Dr. Paul, the mere idea that this water disappear in a couple of minutes after the flood, it has to be a blockage. It has to be a blockage. If you don't have anything blocking...
That's a good...
It has to be a blockage. If you don't have anything blocking the space, when the water comes down the hill, it will go out. It might not go out fast, but it will go out. But the mere idea, in a matter of minutes, after the flood, the rain, the water goes out because it probably is trash. That is my point. Anyhow, concerning the old age pension, since I born, I hearing about this pension. It's Mr. Manning who changed it to a grant because he wanted to move it off the system. If it's a grant, they could say here or take it back. But the old age pension was there way before I born. It's not a grant. It's an old age pension. It's not a pension. It's not a grant. A grant is something different. A grant is something you can get and not get. And
it's discretionary. Yes, they could give it or they could not give it. Yeah.
Right. It's Mr. Manning who put that grant, tried to move pension and put grant. I did not vote that year. That's
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
The nomenclature changed to somehow align that we could pull it back if we want.
Yep.
But I never understood really to me, it was a kind of silly play of words.
Well, it's the same thing that's happening to the Minister of Finance a couple months ago spoke about in 20-something. NIS will not be able to sustain its obligations due to financial constraints because the number of people in that category keeps increasing. So I guess it's the same issue the state is facing with being able to afford paying it out. So they not move to this discretionary option.
No, Paul, that nomenclature changed at a point where we were very robust with natural gas.
Well, they must have looked down the road and said can't sustain.
No, and the actuarial calculations for NIS has yielded a solution. They didn't just throw their arms up in the air and say, NIS will collapse in 5 years' time. They said, this is what you need to do. And one of the things you needed to do was to change retirement age to 65, which the state is dilly-dallying on. I don't know why, but they're dilly-dallying. and they're waffling like we usually waffle through
Because
everything.
it's an election year.
In true island style, we waffle through everything, and not decision makers in a timely manner and implement things in a timely manner. We always waffle and hem and haw like the ultimate procrastinators. So NIS has offered solutions in terms of what needs to be done. Is the state to now act on it? NIS can't do it without the state saying, well, okay, these are the solutions. But all NIS can tell you is, look, this is the problem. This is the solution. Do something.
Mm-hmm.
Good
morning, caller.
Of Michelle Obama. Do something.
Yeah. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Sweetbread.
Good morning, Richard and Wendell. I know you're listening, Wendell. So, before I make my point, on that point Richard was making, the NIS also said to bring in other groups of people like the self-employed, and for instance, I'll give an example. My nephew, he's a welder he's 50 years now, and he's been a welder for like 25 years. He has worked for himself all the time. And he went to NIS, I told him go and find out about 5 years ago, to ask if he could be paid, making contributions towards that. And they told him no. Right? So then, when he decides to retire from his work, whatever time, that at age 65, 70, he has nothing to get from national insurance because he didn't contribute. Right? So they should open up this thing for doubles vendors, welders, other people who are self-employed. Even though I'm self-employed, but I worked before, so I don't have to pay any more NIS. So the thing is, just open up the market to those people so they will get something. But I think Mr. Colin has said at times that if they did that, they didn't go through it because it was, kind of wait about 15 years before anything materializes, like any sum of money that they will get. I think I heard them say that. Could be wrong. Now, my point is this now. Every time the conversation with senior citizens grant comes up, some people always equate fairness and unfairness with someone who has never worked getting a grant as compared to those who have worked and only getting their gratuity as well as the NIS monthly payment. You can't do that because the government needs to give people who are unfortunate something. And the senior citizens grant is something like that. So if somebody was a housewife, so then when you reach 65, 67, 70, you can't get no money because what? You're a housewife, you never contribute. You did contribute as a housewife because you took care of the family, So I don't know why they're always saying, a year work a day in your life, you make a contribution to society. That could never be correct. So it has no fear and unfairness in that. That is how it's supposed to be because there are other grants that the government gives to aid needy people. So I don't know why they use those comparisons. You never work a day in your life. Since when parents at age, my mother is 102, she never worked a day in her life. So then what? When she reached 65, she wasn't getting no pension. But the thing is, people are living longer. So the government putting on more money now. My mother's still getting pension. She's 102. Right? So it's not a matter of fairness and unfairness. It's a matter of the government assisting the needy. And whoever will say that, I'm sure they have families who are being assisted with the government or the senior citizens pension as well. Grant, senior citizens grant. So always have a talk about that. Every 2-3 years, that's all coming up. Anyway, so you all have a wonderful day.
Same to you.
All right. Thank you. 222-8255. Toll free North Americans, 866-525-1090.
And everybody always know who never work a day in their life. Right? How you know that? How you know somebody never work a day in their life? How you know that? Because with them all the time. How you know that though? You never work a day in your life.
Yeah. All right. Don't forget our morning poll. You can vote on it on our website and on our morning our mobile app.
Them still much children.
Let me tell you.
4, 5, and 6 and see how much work you'll do.
Let me tell you how crime affects Paul in a very real circumstance. Paramount Pictures was actively considering Trinidad and Tobago for one of their reality TV series. Okay? Paramount Group. Because I know
Huge movie studio.
some of the people who were actively quoting them and they were actively considering Trinidad. Trinidad was disregarded for the reason that the Paramount Security did not pass Trinidad and Tobago of meeting the standard of security necessary to allow it to happen.
That's sad.
Because of the crime situation and also because of the crime warning, because we are tier 3, reconsider travel to Trinidad and Tobago emanating out of the US. And so they said, unfortunately, they couldn't because we did not pass the security test, that it would be safe enough for them to do it. That's how crime affects.
Yeah. Good
in
morning.
a very tangible way.
Good morning, pal.
Good morning.
Morning.
I don't know if there's 102 program I'm calling.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to, good morning to the whole panel.
Good morning.
And I'd like to tell Mr. Paul Stevenson that yesterday I saw a police officer with a body camera on his bulletproof vest.
Very good.
Right? And I would like to, I have two questions to ask. One, the business people who is closing their business in Trinidad and Tobago and leaving and migrating, are they paying their taxes? And my second question is, the police officers who in these elite force, what we are different section of the police service, who are in the elite forces, when they reach the age of 60, do we have a system in place to defuse these guys? These are, thank you very much.
All right, pal. All the best.
What he means by diffuse these guys?
Well, I guess debrief when you're in a job that has been intense and high stakes, and in many cases raises your psychological state. You're supposed to be debriefed coming out of violent encounters. So it happens in some jurisdictions where when you come out of those jobs, you are debriefed to make sure that you are able to settle back into society. Very often American soldiers come back in, and because of the kind of violence they've encountered and what they've seen, they can't settle back into normal society.
Yeah.
Could have PTSD and other things.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
I was just, it was amazing how the media in the papers and everything, I mean, all right, it leads, right? The bacchanal that went on it's fair that it needs to be pronounced, but nobody, right, did even expand on the other contributions by the other groups that were there and the people, because as much as it was small attendance, it was very actively, people were lined up and people made some presentation. But the one thing that was dragged out of it was the confusion part. The leads, and it's sad that something that had a profound, one of the big step in our civilization, having this conversation around who we are, identity politics, and all these kind of things. But the one thing the media get is the bacchanal part, which is part of the conversation. But I find that it was, maybe it's just an example of how we don't profound and nuance our contributions to who we are and have a really, because it just cheats everybody else's contribution in a way that, and just belittles it, a bacchanalist kind of situation. All right, fellas.
All right.
You're right.
Thank you.
I chose the bacchanal part that will sell.
That's the monument. That's the monument section session he was talking about, right? Changing monuments and stuff. Just to contextualize it for citizens who are listening or people who are listening who are a little unclear. That session, the first session was yesterday, I believe, with regard to
campus,
to the changing of monuments and symbols across Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, there were differing opinions and some very vocal differing opinions which made the news.
Well, yeah, it's a in some people's estimations a contentious topic, but that don't mean people can't discuss it and share their views, though dissenting in a respectful manner. For somebody to shout go back to Africa is offensive and obnoxious. Because you disagree with somebody's perspective, and he wasn't even giving her a chance to complete a contribution, and they asked him, okay, you'll get a chance to speak after. He kept interrupting her, and he built out this offensive go back to Africa. So where he should go back to? You know, it's just offensive. What's his name? I want to call his name again. Disgusting. Anyway.
Mindset.
Well, the filth in his mind came out. As it will eventually do. We have 2 more minutes to take some calls.
Yeah, we have 2 minutes. Yep. Give Strive squeezing a call or two for that time.
Coming up after the 8 a.m. news, we'll have an encore presentation of Dr. Terence Farrell talking about constitutional reform and his views on the present economic opportunities and challenges in Trinidad and Tobago. You can look out for that at 8:05. We haven't heard from Zena for like 2 weeks. I'm very disturbed.
She said she's taking a vacation. She's been going through CJ. I think she went she's in the bad books at home.
Oh, strong banner.
Yeah, probably something like that. Morning.
Isn't she traveling or something?
No idea.
The guy that say go back to Africa, there is a lot like him, haters, a lot of like him. Oh God, is the country too small for them? I call them haters, silent haters.
All right. Thank you. All right, we have like 30 seconds again for this call. Good morning.
It wasn't silent.
Morning, Captain Ron.
I missed most of your program. Listen, I just want to say to the people, gentlemen who claiming and look to tell people go back to Africa. Let me tell you something, sir. I go to Africa. I have property in Africa. You need to go and see Africa. Africa is not what the colonized people have made it to be, but BBC and all these countries have tried to get it to be. It's not that way. There are so many Europeans and Americans going there and move there. So be careful when you say go back to Africa. If you go to
a stupid statement. I went to Africa and they while they welcomed me, they said, "You're not African, you're of African descent." So
that's right. But that's
I'm from
correct.
Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm trying desperately to stay there. You know, I love it down there. It's really much better than what I thought it was, from what they painted it to be. Anyway, guys, have a good one. All right. On tomorrow.
This is a disgusting mind. That's
Thank
what
you, Captain Ron.
Have a good day.
All the best. Let's wrap it up for this Thursday, guys.
You all have a wonderful day. Be careful out there and smile and laugh. It's good for your health.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And you'll be smiling and laughing next week, Saturday and Sunday, when Lot of Madness comes to Queen's Hall on Saturday, the 7th of September at 8:30 p.m. and Sunday, 8th of September at 6:30 p.m. Tickets are available now at the Central Bank box office from 12 noon to 6 p.m. daily. So you can get your tickets at Central Bank box office. It's the one outlet that's selling tickets right now. The other outlet should be selling tickets later on today, hopefully after 12 noon. And which would be our usual outlets, K Squared Fashions in West Mall, East Gates, and Brentwood Mall in Chagonas, as well as Electronics in Arima, Jubilee Rawi in Tunapuna, Anthony's Florals in Val Park Shopping Plaza, and of course, Shop Auto Services. I'll give you all of that information again tomorrow, which will be Friday, because the weekend begins tonight at the second after midnight. Isn't it glorious? The weekend is here as we head towards Independence Day. Have a fantastic day, whatever you do. And as Paul said, remember to smile and laugh. It's good for your health.
All right. Talk to you guys bright and early come tomorrow morning. Of course, the lotto has rolled over to 12 million buckaroos. Let's get into 8 o'clock news brief if he is in.
This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
It is time for your news update to 8 o'clock. I'm Avril Sintel-Bab. Good morning. Navin Badasi, the driver of the vehicle in which teenager Kylie Poonan was killed last week, Tuesday, attended a funeral on Saturday. The Express newspaper quoted a relative as saying that 19-year-old Badasi was discharged from hospital, and while he was not present at Poonan's funeral service at her family's home on Peterloo Street, Friendship Village, near Princestown, he was at the Shore of Peace, Mosquito Creek, where the 17-year-old was cremated. The relative added that it was uncertain whether Poonan's family had spoken to Badasi following the funeral. Poonan, who died from head trauma she suffered in the collision, was a passenger in a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution driven by her boyfriend Badasi, who was said at the time to be driving at a very high speed. The funeral of Enrico Andy Guerra and his 5-year-old daughter took place at the family's home at the corner of Moruga Main Road and Pui Road in St. Mary's Village, Moruga, on August 28th. The father and daughter were side by side and both dressed in white in the same casket. Hundreds of mourners, as well as the police, attended. Guerra, also known as Rico, owned Enrico's Corner Mart at the front of the house. 34-year-old Guerra and his 5-year-old daughter Anika were gunned down on August 21st at around 9:45 p.m. Anika turned 5 on August 13th. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says he's fed up with being blamed for TNT's spiraling crime rate, adding he is also tired of people seeking leniency for some criminals. Speaking at a post-cabinet media briefing at Whitehall in Port of Spain yesterday, Dr. Rowley said those contributing to high crime should not be given a pass, especially those who harm children. Insisting that he has no empathy for these criminals, Dr. Rowley said for a fellow citizen to have seen a child in somebody's hand or in somebody's presence and deliberately discharge a firearm knowing they're going to kill that child, they are a different kind of devil. And the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association has told its members they are not to report to work if their assigned school is closed. President Martin Lumpkin advised teachers that they should report to work at the school to which they were assigned by the Teaching Service Commission. In a membership advisory on August 28th, he said any instruction to report to another location by any entity other than the Teaching Service Commission should be ignored. Lumpkin told teachers if there are attempts by agents of the employer to intimidate them, they should report it immediately to the association. Well, that was your update to 8 o'clock. Look out for news in full at 12 noon.
But you see, the whole point is that we now have a convention that says that a person with disability has all of the rights of anybody else. And the Trinidad and Tobago government, because it has signed up to that convention, is bound to create laws or to create legislation that ensures those rights. Right. I think that's pretty wonderful. What do you think?
Oh, it's a pretty good idea.
Thank you so much, Eileen.
Thank you, Jean.
Let's look to the future.
You all know that, right? Anyway, let's say good morning to our guest. Good morning, Dr. Farrell. Thank you for joining us. Could that come in? Thank you for joining us.
Very welcome, Paul. Good to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell, for joining us. Of course, Paul and
you understand my questions, right, Dr. Farrell? You've been around long enough.
I've been around a long time.
That's right. Those are coming. They can be considered no less legitimate. Yes, pan is a national instrument, but they are critical, important artistic expressions in Trinidad and Tobago. And they are not to feel slighted where we headquarters. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about constitutional reform. And you are part of the committee appointed by the Honorable Prime Minister to galvanize public opinion on the issues related to constitutional reform. The committee has submitted its first report, if I'm not mistaken, to the Prime Minister. Would that be correct?
That's correct. First and last. We don't have any more to go.
Oh, you have no more. I thought, for some reason, I heard the news that some extension had been given, but so your work is done.
Yeah, the extension is given in order to prepare for the conference to come.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a conference coming up to discuss the issues contained therein.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I attended one, the one in City Hall.
Yes.
It was quite interesting. I don't think the committee, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But let me ask the question. How do you think the response had been to the call for the public to come out and give their opinion? Let me start with that question.
Well, quite frankly, I think it was excellent. And let me try to explain why. We received over 800 submissions by email. And one of the things that I try to point out to people is that if you go back to the Wooding Commission in 1972-74, the Wooding Commission received 100 submissions, including one from myself. And so even at that time, the population was about 750,000. So even if you allow for that, we did a lot better. The second issue is that I think people seem to think that if you want to get the views of people on a subject, and for example, you've just done your poll where you had 43 respondents, that you need to talk to thousands of people. That is simply not so. For a population like Trinidad and Tobago, an electorate of about 1.1 million people, you just need to talk to several hundred people in order to get a sense as to what people are thinking and so on. Just to illustrate, in the United States, when they are polling for elections, like now the presidential election and so on, the electorate in the United States is 260 million people. When the best pollsters go outside there, they usually sample between 2,000 and 8,000 people in the United States with an electorate of 260 million people.
That's less than 1%.
Exactly. And so if you have any sort of basic familiarity with statistics, then, I saw some people talk about the fact that we had a paltry response and so on. That is simply not correct. And I think it kind of betrays a lack of knowledge of or understanding of statistics. We think our response was excellent. And I think that we took advantage of the fact that people sent in stuff by email. And that varied from one-liners to people who submitted extensive and long essays, really, on various aspects of constitutional reform. In addition to that, we had the town hall meetings. Some of them were poorly attended, that is true, but overall we had over 300 people attending the town hall meetings. And we had 3 youth forums, one in Tobago and 2 in Trinidad, which was also well attended by young people. And that's an opportunity for people to talk, as you did when you came to the City Hall. People can talk and they can explain and they can elaborate on their views. So we think that the response was excellent. And moreover, when you look at what the responses we got, they are very consistent with what the Ramadan Committee got in 2013. And even if you go back to the Wooding Commission, it's very consistent with what people were saying even 50 years ago. So we are very, very comfortable with with the responses that we got.
It's not quantity, it's quality.
Both quantity and quality of the responses that we got, yes.
Yeah. And I know there are lots of people who may have contributed when the People's Partnership was doing their constitutional exercise. And then you have this other one, and there's a portion of Trinidadians and Tobagonians that'll be a little jaded about it.
Yes.
Because they'll feel I am putting forward effort that will amount to naught.
Correct.
Because the current construct requires the participation of the opposition or a party having the overwhelming majority to achieve that constitutional reform. But when you go through an exercise, Dr. Farrell, like that constitutional exercise, and you present this document, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but at a PNM rally, they dismissed certain things like 2 terms, then they fixed. So they've already started dismissing consultations with citizens. Why does that engender any faith in the citizenry that their voices are truly heard if it narrowly comes down to the decisions of a few people, whoever constitution moves forward, and oftentimes one person?
Okay, so let me try to respond to that, Richard, in a number of different ways. First of all, there are currently 5 constitutional reform exercises taking place across the region. In Belize, in Jamaica, in Barbados, in Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana has just started one, although the Guyanese constitution is the most recent Caribbean constitution. 5 at the same time. And I think what it is telling us is that there is a demand, if you like, for change of our constitutional arrangements, which were bequeathed to us by the British. And there's now a demand to change those arrangements because those arrangements are clearly not working well for us. The second point I would make is that when you look at constitutional reform efforts across the globe, across the world, most of them actually fail. And the reason for that is not very hard to discern. The reason for that is that almost by definition, a constitutional reform exercise, if it is done properly and if it is done with integrity, is going to make recommendations for changing the balance of power in the society, in the government, the balance of power between the parliament and the executive and the judiciary and the independent institutions. And those are very much evident in the recommendations that we have made. Now, for those people who currently hold power, it is not in their interest to change that, particularly if there are recommendations which diminish or constrain or restrict their power. And this is why, in most instances, constitutional reform exercises tend to run aground. And in Chile, for example, they've had they spent 2 years in an elaborate exercise that has just stopped. So the pathway to success is narrow. In respect of Trinidad, you're quite right. Constitutional change requires a special majority, especially for those provisions in the Constitution which are entrenched. And any meaningful reform is, in fact, going to attach to those entrenched provisions. So therefore, you are going to need a special majority. Our process, our procedure, and our faith is that Parliament has been put there by the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They are not our masters. We are their masters. And therefore, if you have a process where the people of Trinidad and Tobago are saying to the parliamentarians who we have put there that this is what we want, then I think they ought to respect that. They may not, but they ought to respect that. The other point, the last point, is that in respect of the PNM's recent convention, we have put forward a report and recommendations. That report and recommendations are for everyone to examine, everyone to critique, everyone to put forward their views. So we are expecting, in fact, and we are welcoming every political party, every NGO, every business organization, every trade union to look at our report, look at our recommendations, and to come up with their own if they don't agree with what we have said. The only thing that I am saying that they should do when they are doing that is that number one, their responses or their recommendations ought to be based on principle. There must be a basis for what you are saying. Secondly, it must be reasoned. There must be a rationale for your recommendation. And it must be offered in the spirit of trying to move the process forward. So we have absolutely no difficulty if people disagree with what we have said. Not at all. In fact, it would be quite odd if people didn't, because you are in fact working on creating and change, and people may not like change. So a prime minister will obviously want to keep the election date in his back pocket. But the point is that the prime minister keeping the election date in his back pocket is a fundamentally undemocratic exercise. It's an undemocratic process. It's arbitrary, and so therefore it is inconsistent with the principle of a sovereign democratic state. It's not. It's simply not. It's, well, quite frankly, normatively, right? One can argue it's simply wrong to do that. Now we have inherited that from the British. That's how the British did their thing. They, you just call the election whenever it is you feel that you want to do that. But the question is, for Trinidad and Tobago, is it consistent with principle to do that? Every sitting prime minister, again, would want to say, well, I will serve for 25 years.
And I guess the question is, who does that serve? Does it serve the incumbent, or does this serve the people widely in a transparent and accountable way? Dr. Farrell, I looked at an interview that yourself and the chairman of the committee did on TTT, and one of the issues that came up was the issue of the savings clause.
Yes.
And for the members of the public looking on who may not understand, first of all, explain what a savings clause is.
Yes.
And what are the implications of evolving the process forward to remove that savings clause, and what impact that will have on lawmaking moving forward.
Okay. So the savings clause, which is section 6 of the current constitution, was put into the constitution essentially to save all previous legislation that had been passed when Trinidad and Tobago was a colony. And that made very good sense at the time. In fact, most Caribbean countries had a savings clause, except I think one. And in some cases, their savings clause was limited. They said it's only for 5 years. In our case, we put in what is called a general savings clause, which was unlimited in time. The savings clause was functional in the sense that it saved all previous legislation. So you didn't have to go back as a new independent parliament and simply re-legislate everything, because there are hundreds of pieces of legislation, hundreds of ordinances. So it simply made sense to say these continue. However, what the savings clause also did was that it said that if you had a previous piece of legislation done as a colony, and that legislation was found to be in breach of our fundamental rights, that is to say sections 4 and 5 of the Constitution, you couldn't change it. You couldn't declare it to be unconstitutional. And so therefore what you had in that is that you had legislation enacted under Trinidad and Tobago as a colony, which trumped the Constitution. So you had ordinary legislation, which was in fact higher than the Constitution, and the Constitution is supposed to be supreme law. It is fundamentally inconsistent, and it is not consistent with a sovereign democratic state, which is what we are. So you'll see in our report that we have the principles that we have articulated, sovereignty being one, and the issues that we have put under the sovereignty column, that is the number one. The savings clause is inconsistent with a sovereign democratic state. And so therefore it has to go.
Why do you think then that there has not been a move to remove that? Because you have explained it quite pellucidly.
Yes.
I think the present legislators and past legislators understand that.
Yes.
Legal luminaries understand that, particularly post 1976, when the Republican Constitution came into effect, when we became a republic. But we have not since 1976 seen people to move past that saving clause.
That's right.
Yeah. Why? I don't understand it.
Well, I don't understand it either, Paul. And it's very interesting that there's a very recent case which went to the Privy Council. And the Privy Council, this had to do with, I think it's the Chandler matter. It's Chandler number 2 matter at the Privy Council. And the Privy Council said, listen, there's nothing that we can do about this thing. This thing may be unjust, but it is constitutional. It is constitutional because it is saved law, and we can't do anything about it. And they went on further to say it is for the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago to fix this problem. We can't help you. Now, the CCJ has a different perspective on the matter. The perspective of the Caribbean Court of Justice is that you cannot have anything, even if it is like a savings clause, which trumps the Constitution, which is the supreme law. And so therefore, the Privy Council, when that case has come up in other jurisdictions, for example, in the case of Barbados, it has come up and so on, they have said, no, you can't have that, okay? And they have struck it down. They have said that those provisions are unconstitutional, and therefore they struck it down. The Privy Council refused to do that, and they said, let the Parliament fix it. And the Parliament has to fix it. It is about time. And we have found that it is after 50 years, there is absolutely no need to save all these outdated legislation. For example, there are things in there like the sedition thing, which is currently in the court. There are things in there about that discriminate against people because of their sexual orientation, that an immigration officer can prevent somebody from coming into Trinidad and Tobago because they are homosexual. That kind of quite frankly, let me just say, use the word foolishness, right? We have inherited from an old colonial time, and it continues to be there, and you can't challenge it.
But the ironic thing is the country that handed down to us has moved past that.
Oh, absolutely. This is the ironic thing.
It's the ironic thing.
It is quite ironic. And you know, even the mandatory death penalty, which is under the Offences of the Person Act, which makes the penalty for murder mandatorily is death.
Yeah.
And most countries have simply either moved past the death penalty completely, or you have recognized that there may be instances where somebody has committed a murder, but the circumstances are such that the death penalty is not warranted. We can't do that. A judge in Trinidad and Tobago has to follow the law, and therefore has to sentence the person to death. And that's quietly, I mean, it's not right. We've got to fix that.
Yeah. Well, I think the Caribbean country that did not have the savings clause is the one that got it right. And because when I first started as a constitutional law student, I never understood what was the concept. What were they thinking when they fabricated and constructed that 1962 Constitution? Because it was like, and I think part of it was a colonial mindset. I think part of it is rooted in that. That you were taking a brave new step, so to speak, as an independent territory, and they felt they wanted the security of knowing, well, these laws still exist, rather than saying, look, if these laws are incompatible with sections 4 and 5, out they go.
Out they go, yes, exactly.
Out they go.
But remember, at that time too, we were still under the sovereignty of the king. So, and that's why I specified particularly post 1976.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it is odd why the Winning Commission left it, and they didn't actually discuss it at all, which is a little strange because I mean you had people there like Justice Georges and Wooding himself, Michael de Labastide was on that, and it really is a little odd that they didn't address that issue.
Given all the iterations, I think there were 5 or 6 documents on constitutional reform.
Yes.
I think the most productive of those had been the 1974, which predicated the Republican Constitution. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but
go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but Rick Williams at the time didn't implement 90% of what Wooding recommended. Essentially, what happened with the Wooding Commission report, which would have been quite precedent-setting if it had been implemented, is that Williams basically took it and put it in a drawer. He implemented out of it the ombudsman. Of course, they removed the governor general and made the president, and they shifted some powers from the prime minister to the president. And quite frankly, that was about it. And the point is that I think we know now that the 76 Constitution does not reflect any of the draft constitutions that the Wooding Commission had done, but was in fact drafted by Ellis Clark. So Clark was involved in the 62 Constitution and in the 76 Constitution. So the Wooding Commission report and draft constitutions never saw the light of day for the most part.
Let me ask a straight question. Do you think the public really cares? The wider public? I mean, and I'm not saying that to diminish the work of the committee or people who would have come to the constitutions or sent emails or correspondences about their thoughts on constitutional reform, but the wider public, do you think they understand how it can and should impact their lives if there is meaningful constitutional change, or does it just get mired in the political entanglement we have in this country?
Yeah, I think so. Starting with the last point that you've made, politics in this country tends to trump and to tangle up everything, quite unfortunately. The second point is that we have abandoned what we used to call civics education in our primary and secondary schools. So you remember when in primary schools in the 1960s and so on, we had a subject called civics, which students were taught about how the society functions, how government functions, about the Senate and the House of Representatives, etc., etc. And we did that. In the American society, for example, kids understand and they are taught the American Constitution from very early. We don't have that. And what little that we had of it in the 1960s, we dropped it from the curriculum. So therefore, we have a few generations of Trinidadians who really don't have any profound understanding of the Constitution and what it means and how it impacts their lives, except I would say that they do have an understanding that they are in a system, that they vote every 5 years, and that there are political parties, and that there's a judiciary. They do have an understanding of those kinds of basic things, but they don't have an appreciation as to whether or not those things can be made to work better, which is therefore what is constitutional reform. They have no sense of that. And so therefore part of the process is about education. And we've made that point in the report. We've emphasized that point in the report, getting back to a situation where whether you keep this current constitution, hopefully not, or you change it to something better, there is a process of education starting from early childhood all the way up to early secondary school level, where the students can get an understanding of the system of government that they have.
Yeah. I mean, it's so... I mean, the country needs constitutional reform so desperately in terms of moving that system of accountability and those checks and balances that are more robust, and the sharing, devolving of power.
Yes.
And I think a lot of citizens want that. And I think maybe they're a little bit more informed than we give them credit for.
Yes.
But I think they become a little jaded, that they think, well, look, the current construct probably means nothing is going to happen.
Yes.
That small window of success that you talked about, Dr. Farrell.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they're realistic that, look, unless somebody has the vast majority of seats,
yes,
there is very little chance of constitutional agreement going to take place between the current two parties in power.
Well, what I would say, though, is that I think that we should be shifting the conversation away from the two parties to ourselves. And you see, if I think people understand that we are the ones who are ultimately in control, you see, we can put them in power and we can remove them if we want. So if you have a set of recommendations for reform and people are saying, we want you to have two-term limits, we want to have the right of recall, we want to have referendums, we want to have a more effective and independent president, and then you have a political party who says, we are having none of that, well, then it is entirely...
But let me put a pin, Dr. Farrell, because as we said, it becomes mired in political alignment very often, and rational reasoning goes out the door.
Yes.
At the altar of political alignment. So you say, we want, but then the prime minister or the opposition leader makes a statement on his or her perspective, or his or her party's perspective on some of the recommendations.
Yes.
And very often people just line up behind that.
That's
because
true.
That leader has made a statement.
That's
so
true.
So that is part of what we're dealing with also. So when you say we want, who is this we? We is not a homogeneous we.
Yes. But I would think, though, Paul, that I would rather doubt. I mean, I haven't looked at their report, the PNM's report, but I would doubt, quite frankly, that the majority of people, or a lot of people in the PNM, agree with those.
I'm not saying they do, but I'm saying there's other influence that comes from a political leader making a statement.
That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. And there are a lot of people who are not aligned to any political party. And we also have people who are influential in the community, including the media itself, for example, that if the media took on the responsibility of surfacing these issues, of explaining them, of calling out the leadership of the political parties on positions which are irrational or which are not based on principle, then it can have an effect, I think, in terms of people's perception of their leaders and of the positions that they have taken.
One of the...
But it comes back to our civic.
Let me just put a question from the chat here, because I think it's a very good question from Carlisle Cupid. If Dr. Farrell can identify a country that has recently undergone a successful exercise like this that we can learn from.
That's a good one. That's a good question.
Good question.
That's a very good question. Usually, constitutional reform exercises come in situations of extreme situations, of situations where the society is, well, I don't want to say revolution, but there is some kind of extreme set of circumstances which kind of push people towards having that reform. Instances of where you have committees and commissions and people sit down and so on, as we try to do in the Caribbean here, as we are trying now in the Caribbean. If you look at what the process is happening in Jamaica, for example, you're getting that same kind of tribal...
So some sort of crisis.
Yes. You need to have some kind of crisis, quite frankly, that is going to force the change on people. So very good question, and I will do some research on it to see.
Richard,
the Chilean process, I think, was very hopeful until it came to an end a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and oftentimes it gets mad over one particular phrase or one particular clause that people have an issue with it. Yeah. But you know what I was getting to, Dr. Farrell, the issue of how civic-minded we are as citizens. I think the vast majority of citizens in this country, and I'm subject to correction, have never stood up for anything in their lives. Beyond, I don't know, because I'm just talking in terms of my friends and stuff sometimes, and I'm saying, how can you go through your entire life and not stand up for anything?
I have a phrase here, Richard, and you may agree or disagree. Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Well, yes.
And that's what's at play. But a lot of the population are so engaged in bread and butter issues, shelter issues, that the higher issues sometimes get pushed aside because you're so engaged in survival on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's right. The daily struggle is real. The daily struggle for most people is real. And so therefore they don't have time and the space to kind of think about these things. And they don't recognize, quite frankly, that the things that they are struggling with are in fact at base in the Constitution. You know, I've been saying that things like crime, things like, WASA not fixing the roads and the potholes in the roads and so on, the fundamental issue there is an issue of accountability. Holding people to account for we worry about integrity, of course, but holding people to account for their performance. And I keep saying that you can't hold the constable or the licensing officer or the customs officer or the guy who is supposed to fix the road or the WASA turncock. You can't hold them accountable unless you hold people at the very top of the hierarchy accountable. So that's where we've got to start. And the recommendations that we have made in this report are actually moving us towards holding the top office holders accountable for integrity and for performance.
Well, some may suggest that, some sociologists may suggest that there's some philosophies that keep societal structures in place to keep that struggle at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs for the benefit of those
at the top.
At the top, because then you're so consumed with struggling day to day. I want to move the conversation to what's next, because I'm glad that you cleared up that the committee has no real issue with and I'm paraphrasing, you could correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Politicians and political leaders are welcomed to share their opinions.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right? So Dr. Rowley's statement at the convention, it's just part of what the process is. Would you say that's correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you welcome Mrs. Salbi Sessa and any other political leader, NGOs, civil society organizations. It's not a document that's a fait accompli.
That's correct. Absolutely correct. Well,
right. So with that said, there has been an extension granted, and now there's a conference planned. What then is the objective of the conference, and what format will it take?
Right. So if you look at the report, you will see that our terms of reference included a conference. So the idea always was that the report would be, the idea was to create a working document. So section 5 of our report we call it a working document. That document lays out the recommendations chapter by chapter, based on the current constitution, of the recommendations that we have made for reform. That document forms the basis for the conference. We're calling it different names: conference, convention, constituent assembly. But conceptually, the idea is that what you do is that you bring together people who are representatives of political parties, because political parties are extremely important at this stage, because political parties actually represent whole blocks of people. Right? We're not saying necessarily that political parties are monolithic in their thinking, but they do represent blocks of people. So you want political parties to be involved. You want to have civil society organizations to be involved. You want the business community, the trade union movement. You want the NGOs to be involved. And then you want to have you want to have the public present. Why present? Because the idea is that you would have people who are delegates, so political parties and NGOs and so on would send delegates to the convention. The delegates would be in a position where they would be looking at the issues, and they would consider if there is consensus. There may be consensus on particular things, and there may be some differences. And you have a process where those are discussed, but it's a conference, so you have to manage that. And then you can have people decide at the conference which one of the 2 positions or 3 positions that they are in favor of. And then that then becomes the new position that will then be drafted as a draft constitution to go to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago.
Understood. So, and following the convention or meeting or whatever we want to call it, or discussion, what is expected to happen? Is there a document expected to come out of that?
Well, so conceptually, what will happen is that you're not drafting any constitution at a convention. You're discussing the issues that are put forward. At that stage, if the convention arrives at consensus on changes to the constitution, it would then need to go to a drafting committee. There's a bunch of lawyers whose responsibility would be to draft the thing in legal language, right? A draft constitution, similar to what Wooding and they did, and what Principles of Fairness did, and so on. You actually draft a constitution, and then that draft constitution, which reflects what comes out of the convention, would then go forward to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, hopefully. Well, it's an interesting process. Can I ask you to take off one hat and put on another hat now?
Yes.
I didn't prep you before on this, so I apologize in advance. You're an economist. I'm going to take down this banner, so that we will know we've ended our conversation on constitutional reform.
Yes.
And we've entered a conversation now on economics, because this is your training in addition to law, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Right. How we're heading into a budget cycle in Trinidad and Tobago. What do you think are the main challenges facing us economically in the country? I know we only have 10 minutes, and I'm putting you in an unfair position, but
you only have 10 minutes, Paul. Let me just say in sort of in summary, and then you can probably take over. We are not in a good place. We are not in a good place in as far as the economy is concerned. The fundamentals are not in a good place. Particularly if you start with the energy sector, for example, and you look at what is happening in respect of the production of natural gas, you can essentially forget about oil, because oil is now way down below, I think it's about 50,000 barrels a day, which is extremely low. But equally, natural gas production is down and is continuing to remain down. So we are way down from our peak of 4.2 BCF a day. We are now well below 3 BCF per day. I think we're down to about 2.7 BCF per day in Trinidad and Tobago now. And that has had implications in a number of respects. Number one, in respect of, say, LNG, Train 1 is down, and I don't see any prospect, quite frankly, of Train 1 coming back up, if ever at all. There's been, of course, a restructuring of the arrangement of the ownership of Atlantic LNG, but I don't see Train 1 coming back into operation. Secondly, so LNG exports are down. Secondly, in respect of the petrochemical sector, that is production of ammonia and methanol, that sector basically has been limping for the last, I would say maybe about since 2011. We've had curtailments and so on, but basically the companies down there are not in a good shape because they are not getting enough gas, number one. Number two, the gas sales contracts that they are getting are short-term contracts. They are like 2-year contracts and 3-year contracts. You can't work with that in that kind of business. The economics don't work for you when you have a gas sales contract of 2 years or 3 years. So very interestingly, one of the big companies down there, Nutrien, and I looked at the annual report, and they reported that they had to take a significant impairment on their Trinidad and Tobago business because of the short-term nature of the gas sales contract. So when you have to do a turnaround down there, and the turnaround might cost you 40, 50, 60 million US dollars, you want to be able to run that plant for another 5, 6, 7 years before you get to another turnaround. But if you can't plan that, and you have a gas sales contract of 2 or 3 years, it's not making sense, quite frankly. And therefore, they had to take an impairment. What that means is that they probably make a loss on the Trinidad operations, which means as far as the country is concerned, you're not going to get any tax revenue from one of the biggest players on the estate. So the estate is essentially limping along with whatever gas it can get.
The Minister of Finance recently indicated that because of the price of oil and gas and oil,
yeah,
and of course the production levels that you identify, the shortfalls in that the revenue intake in the country, the revenues of the country would have been overestimated based on where he pegged the price of gas and oil in the last budget.
Yeah.
So the deficit went from $5 to I think $9 billion. Right? We're in an election cycle. Let's not keep that out of the conversation. What are the implications of that, in your opinion, for the upcoming budget, and what the minister's challenges are on the table?
Well, I mean, I suppose there are two ways to answer that. One is to try and answer it as a politician, right? And I'm not a politician. So politicians, if it's an election year, you could expect that the politicians will try to spend as much as they can in order to increase their chances of success at the polls. So that you could expect a budget that will probably do that. As an economist, what you would say is that, listen, you've got to cut your suit to based on the cloth that you have, and you've therefore got. And this is not something I've been saying for years now, that our public expenditure is, number one, it is too high, and a lot of it is spent on the wrong things. And we are not able as a country to take the tough decisions in respect of the bloated public sector that we have, which comes about as a result of the kind of economic model that we've been running here since the 1970s. And we are unable to break that. Politically, none of the political parties have been able to confront that and to break it. But we are getting to the point now, given what the trajectory for oil and for gas revenues and so on, where the thing is going to break by itself, because as the revenues decline, you can see certain things beginning to happen. You can see the debt going up, both domestic debt and external debt going up. You see the international reserves, the foreign exchange reserves declining, and forex availability is down. You see the central bank recently reduced the reserve requirement, in my view, purely to accommodate increased government borrowing, and that is domestic borrowing from the commercial banking system, with all kinds of implications in terms of potential for increases in credit expansion, for increases in the money supply, for all of that that goes with what I consider a very suspect decision on the part of the central bank. But that's a discussion that we can have at another time. And then we have all of these liabilities that are increasing, because when you don't pay people back their VAT refunds, so the VAT refunds are increasing, you're not paying contractors. These things are not visible. The extent of the overdraft on the central bank account, these things are not visible, but they are very much there. And they are reflective of a fiscal situation which is, I would say, is more than tight. I think it is extremely tight, and something is going to have to give at some point. It may not give in the next fiscal year because, as you quite rightly said, it's potentially an election year. But when you kick that can down the road, it just simply means that it's simply going to get worse later on. Final point on that, Paul. The idea that Dragon and these other opportunities and so on are going to be game changers, Manatee and those things, they will not game changers. What will happen is that when they do come on stream in 2027 and so on, is that they will keep the thing going. They will keep Point Lisa ticking over, but they are not going to be game changers. And I don't see, quite frankly, in respect to the energy sector, any game changers on the horizon.
What's your definition of a game changer? I'd have to ask, because the Minister of Energy is certainly pretty optimistic, at least in what he says, that things will improve over the next 2 to 3 years in terms of gas and access to gas.
They will, because if you get Dragon, if Manatee comes on stream and you get access to the Lauren part of the Lauren Manatee field, and there's another smaller cross-border field, that you can have access to. Yes, those things will help, but I'm saying that what they will not take you back up to 4.2 BCF. They will not even take you back up to 3.5 BCF. Remember, with every day that passes, your existing fields are depleting. Your existing fields are running down. So you've got to run faster to deal with that, and also to add a capacity, and I don't see that happening. I don't see where that is going to come from. The Calypso field, which is the Woodside BHP Woodside field, which is off the east coast of Tobago, is supposed to be a fairly big field, but that has not had final investment decision as yet. And I think essentially they are waiting on the appropriate fiscal terms before they could even that's in deep water, and is therefore going to be extremely expensive. And they are waiting on the correct fiscal terms to enable them to do that. But the difficulty is that the better the terms are to bring something like Calypso into production, which might take a couple of years, it's not good for the petrochemical sector. It's not good for ammonia and methanol, because your price of gas at the gate, at the fence, is going to be significantly higher, which is going to be uneconomic for them. So it's a very, very delicate situation, and it's tough, and it's something that I essentially predicted 5 years ago.
I know you were at one point on, I forget the name of the committee, because you offer yourself, well, you are asked to and obliged so many of these, I think it was the post-COVID transformation committee or something.
No, the roadmap to recovery. No, I was not on the roadmap.
Oh, you weren't that? Okay.
No, I was not.
Do you see any opportunities that will bear fruit in the medium to long term in Trinidad and Tobago, that are on the way, that you think are good steps in the right direction?
Well, let me just say, I think that the Ministry of Trade and Industry has been trying in terms of trying to move certain initiatives forward in respect of trying to diversify. So I commend them for that. But one of the problems that we have is that you need, for the non-energy sector, for the diversification process, you need to have as much, if not more, focus and attention and intellectual capacity directed at that as you do on the energy sector, and we don't. Secondly, the institutional framework for making diversification happen is something which we don't have. So we have only now looking at, bringing Invest TT and Export TT and all of those agencies and so on, which had multiplied, bringing them together into one agency to be able to move that forward. The Phoenix Park Industrial Estate, which was built by the Chinese, Beijing Construction, did that. I mean, the potential for that is significant, provided that you had brought in additional Chinese firms and so on who would have access to the South American market and so on. So that still remains potential. But the point I'm making is that the creative sectors, the tourism sector, we chased away sandals, quite foolishly in my view. we have missed so many opportunities that, but we've got to start. You've got to start now in terms of trying to get that diversification process on track. And that's what I can see. I mean,
that word, Dr. Farrell, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your contribution.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Your mic level is quite low.
Yeah, we hardly hear any
that now.
Right.
Fix that, Steve can't go buffet,
Mm-hmm. And you don't want to get more from me.
That, All right. He will chastise you urgently.
Take it up to like 80, 85.
85.
Yeah, directions.
How is that? Better?
It's better.
It's better. All right, carry it up to 95.
How are we doing there?
We're getting better.
Yeah, that's fine.
We can work with that.
Waiting up there, and don't worry with Steven. So
it looks like you guys are looking to have some fun today.
Always.
We have fun all the time.
Are you seeing our poll question on the screen?
Well, this is how it becomes clear that we're in the mood for some entertainment.
Why are you calling our poll entertainment? Would you get proper answer to our poll, Mr. Cambon?
Well, yes. Look at that. You all let this man get you all involved in some political mischief.
Did Chabaka say yes to the poll?
No, I didn't.
What is your answer? Would you agree with that suggestion, Shabaka?
Would I agree with Dr. Tilaksing's suggestion? Have you asked Dr. Tilaksing if that's a serious suggestion?
Wow.
That's the answer right
there. Let me move that question from you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Now you are part of the Caribbean Committee on what's the committee called?
No. I am not part of the government committee. I am part of the Caribbean Freedom Project, which introduced the idea.
Caribbean Freedom Project. That's what I was trying to say. Caribbean Freedom Project.
Yeah,
and
we have.
What's that? Just give us some context as to what that project is meant to do.
Well, in a nutshell, right now, I am sitting down in front of a document called Confronting the Past to Free the Future. It is a civil society report on national monuments, memorials, markers, signs, and symbols that glorify colonial violence, racism, and white supremacy. Among the monuments, signs, symbols, etc., that have been highlighted in this document is the coat of arms, and this document was produced by a collection of Trinidad luminaries. Sorry, pardon me.
Bless you.
We have Dr. Claudius Fergus, Dr. Carol Boyce Davies, Sister Zakia Wadada, Pulitu Springer, Dr. Tahimba Salandi, Dr. Dominic Kalipasad, Brother Rodney Piggott from Tobago, Brother Kafra Cambon, Mr. Ato Osei from South, an artist and musician and painter, Shaman Raul Keith Simon of the Warao Elders Council of San Fernando, and Donna Bermudez, the Cacica of the Warao Nation of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course the late Professor Brinsley Samuel. All these people would have met over the last 2 years before Brinsley passed away to develop this document, to look for the people and values that we celebrate in our place, to look critically at the people and values that we celebrate in our public spaces. And of course, in July 2020 or 2021, let me make sure I have the dates right here, my friends. I think it's 2021. We would have petitioned 2020, July 2020, just before Parliament closed, we petitioned the government successfully, the Parliament successfully, to establish a national committee. And that national committee is the government committee you're talking about. And so, we are the ones who have driven this issue. And the government, of course, is already holding
our document, which includes, as I said, a very elaborate piece on the coat of arms, and so we're very happy to see that our activism is bearing fruit.
So would you consider the fact that the government has the document from the Caribbean Freedom Project type of consultation and part of the consideration that led to this decision as announced by Dr. Rowley?
Well, as I said, we petitioned Parliament in 2020 to look critically at these things. We successfully did pass unanimously. Nobody in the Parliament objected to the idea. And then we kept the pressure on. I'll tell you something exclusively here that there's nowhere else. I mean, you all want to get into the details. We actually consulted with international human rights lawyers and considered genuinely, we wrote what we would call a pre-action protocol letter to the government, telling them that we would we'd be prepared to sue if they did not move the matter forward. We're a very serious organization, and you know, I thought it would be very interesting to see if the government of Trinidad and Tobago, or any Caribbean country for that matter, would want to hold on to monuments that glorify racism and white supremacy and celebrate colonial violence.
What the pre-action protocol had indicated it would sue the government for?
Well, we were going to do something experimental. As I said, we've been consulting international lawyers and so on, and we felt that we would do one of those unprecedented cases. If the having raised the issue of monuments that, for example, you take a monument like Christopher Columbus. What you're celebrating with Christopher Columbus is the genocide of your indigenous people, and they still exist. You're also celebrating on his first voyage, his very first voyage, he started transporting people as against their will across the Atlantic. That is the dawn of the transatlantic trade in human beings, or traffic in human beings. So Christopher Columbus is not just responsible personally for the invasion and occupation of the Caribbean and the initiation of indigenous genocide, but the initiation of another one of the great crimes in human history, or the crimes against humanity, two crimes against humanity, the transatlantic trade or traffic in human beings. And we're saying that having initiated a thing, we've had over 10,000 signatures to the mayor of Port of Spain. The mayor actually, we discovered that there was a meeting in the mayor's office, and in that meeting, the council voted to remove the statue of Columbus to the museum, and the mayor was the one who vetoed that, using his power to veto that. We felt that in these circumstances, we could make a legal case if the government was not going to move forward on the matter, and we would have indicated that to all those in authority. But let me tell you, right now, we really want to congratulate the government on moving this matter forward. Like the university back in 2017, when we challenged them on the issue of Milner, I think, when you just don't know that you're sitting down on something so egregious, it is one thing. But I think when anybody with a bit of genuine concern for this country and for the people of the Caribbean really understands what we are participating in, they move. And that's why I have no doubt that the Trinidadians who find this objectionable only find so because they just have no idea what they are involved in.
So an announcement like what was made by the Honorable Prime Minister Shabaka didn't come as a surprise to you at all?
Well, I felt certain for the last 2 years, and I mean, I would have said this publicly anywhere, that Columbus was gone. And I remember an old Indian gentleman on a show. It might have been Power 102. It might have not this on this station, but another host on this very same channel. We were having a discussion about 2 years ago, and an elderly Indian gentleman, after he became convinced by me that something was wrong with honoring and glorifying Christopher Columbus, He said, so what do you expect to happen next? You're going to move he automatically made the link. He says, so you're going to move you're going to change the coat of arms? And I just laughed. I didn't want to, I didn't feel it was the right moment to explain to him that, yes, it is an egregious sin to have the most important symbol in your country, celebrating such horrendous historical atrocities. And of course
there is a connection between government policy and law in the sense that all laws start as some type of government policy. So, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, we would have had the recent national policy on persons with disabilities. And that policy talks in very strong terms about the need to both enact laws to provide for the human rights of persons with disabilities. It also talks about the need to amend laws that we have on our statute books right now that discriminate against persons with disabilities. So once that policy is adopted and approved by the cabinet, then the process of making it a law can begin. The difficulty with the policy remaining as a policy, two things. One, it's not enforceable. So it does not really give you any rights legally because it's just a policy, it's not a law. And the other thing is that policies can change over time. Policies can change over time as the needs of the government or the focus of the government itself changes. It can change if the government itself changes, so that it's not enough for us to say, well, we have a policy. We have to take that further step to make the policy a law, because that is what will give full protection for the human rights of persons with disabilities.